Welcome to Keep Dreaming, Episode 4. This is a podcast about dreams, the video game and creation engine for PlayStation, and the community that brings it to life. And with me today, I have none other than creator of Lock, the Impy winning, is it Game of the... It's Creation of the Year, right? Creation of
Correct.
the Year? Yeah. Pixel Gorilla. How's it going, Pixel Gorilla?
Howdy. It's going good.
We are well acquainted, Pixel Gorilla and I. I managed to get an Impy nomination, just a nomination, for the voice acting in Locke.
You're welcome.
Are you upset about that? That I failed to bring in another Impy for Locke? I mean, Locke could have had how many Impys?
Well, it just has the one technically.
Yeah. So I could have doubled it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
But
I failed.
I forget what one off the top of my head, which is probably shameful. I do think.
Isn't it Creation or Game of the Year or what did it?
No, I mean what one instead of your voice acting.
Oh.
Like what you lost out to. But I think it had to have been close. Like it had to have been pretty close.
So let's just call it politics. I mean, look, I won it year one. Like I wouldn't give it to me year two either. Like let someone else have a.
They're probably like,
have
we
a
can't
spin.
send this fool another one of these.
Yeah.
Or I guess it would have went to you.
We saw how he behaved the first time. Like, do we really want to do this again? But yeah, so I am the voice you hear in Locke, the word hunt puzzle game that you see on the screen in front of you, and I also wrote the script for the game with Pixel Gorilla. So that would be not the first thing that we ever worked on together, but that would be probably the biggest project that you and I have worked on together.
Oh yeah, we had much conflict and consternation getting that script out.
Oh, it's All-Star, bringing the info. Skinny Chad won the voiceover award.
Thank you, All-Star. Yeah.
I really, I felt like I could take a little bit of credit just because I called his voice acting Impy worthy. I made a slight prediction, and no, but sincerely, I was really happy to see Skinny Chad take that one.
Definitely.
But yeah, Locke. So we're here without much of a plan. Without much of a plan for discussion. I figure we are two talkative dreamers, and we're going to find our way to topics. If anyone has questions in chat about, Locke, the universe, and everything, then feel free to jump in. I think it's going to be a loose one. So, yeah, can you let's see? Can you tell us a little bit about Locke? I know I've heard you talk about it at length.
Oh man,
yeah. Some people here might not be familiar with what exactly this game is.
I mean, it's a puzzle game, and it's kind of loosely based off this specific type of puzzle called a puzzle hunt, which you can find there's like several different versions of this thing. There's like the MIT Mystery Hunt. There is a website called Puzzled Pint, which is a little bit more for beginners. And then there's just a very slew of other ones if you actually like look for it. Like if you look for Puzzle Hunt or Mystery Hunt, you can find resources to find these type of puzzles. But they have a high bar to entry. Like there's a lot of prerequisite knowledge of just how the puzzles are structured, kind of like how like the types of lateral thinking that you need to do. A lot of it is like, you put the information into a spreadsheet and you're doing, you're trial and erroring some things, and it can be quite involved, right? A lot of times there's research involved in it, et cetera, et cetera. But I really liked the format, and I think they have a really good feedback loop. Like the reward of solving them feels really good. Like there's a lot of surprise and delight when you finally get over the hump of the difficulty. And so what I wanted to do was capture that last part, like the surprise and delight of that style of puzzle, without so much difficulty. And I know Locke is considered like a hard game in general, but when you compare it to the genre of puzzles I pulled from, it's like maybe the easiest one. that you could find in that genre.
Were those examples you named, were those IRL puzzle hunts, or were any of those software based, or?
Like a lot of the methods are very beginner methods. Like, so if you were to do a puzzle hunt today and anywhere, like you probably wouldn't find the types of puzzles I was doing from a solution standpoint. Like I had, Morse code, right? And like one of the first ones is Morse code and Pigpen and all this kind of stuff. And that's very, very rudimentary, I'd say. And you wouldn't really find that now. Like that would be seen as kind of taboo to make a puzzle hunt using those methods. But I thought those are the exact kind of methods I want, is like the kind of cliche taboo methods, because I'm trying to introduce people into the genre. So let's start with the classics. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So
no, I mean I definitely might expect to see Morse code in a book like, or in a experience like this. Pigpen I was never familiar with. I mean, I've never played a puzzle hunt game, but
it's not that they wouldn't use Morse code. It's just that they wouldn't use it as directly as I did. Right?
Okay.
There would be like 6 steps in between, and you'd be like, "Oh, this is Morse code," and then you'd do something, right? And so like I just made it one step essentially, which is, I think was the right choice, because I needed people to be able to get into it. And when I make the sequel or whatever that ends up being, I have some thoughts about how I will approach this problem differently.
It is a weird and difficult game to balance and to guess the difficulty of. My experience playing the game, it was very fragmented, because I helped to test a bunch of areas along with Animation B and Yovork. And did anyone else get involved in testing before the game came out?
It was you 3, and then RBD played it like immediately, and I watched him play it.
Oh, no.
And a lot of things changed and were updated based off his playthrough, because I thought he was a very different type of player than U3, and so it showed me a couple. Also, there was a downside to having you guys play it ahead of time, because you were playing it in chunks.
Yeah.
And so like it was easier for you to like ratchet up, whereas when you play it all in one go, like where everything is in, it changes the experience quite a bit. And so having someone like RBD play it right away, experience the game in full, was super helpful, and like really, really, really pointed out some of the trouble spots.
For sure.
So that was super important.
Can we talk about your initial reaction to RBD's playthrough?
Crushed.
Just complete emotional devastation. Would that be accurate?
Yeah.
Well, he was very I've heard him describe the Dreams community as a bit hug boxy when it comes to getting feedback on your work, which I think is fair. And he was anything but hug boxy with you. He was helpful and direct and straightforward.
Yeah. No, I wasn't like upset about it. I was just like, because I was crushed because he was correct, not because he was saying mean things. If that makes sense. I was like, oh no, I totally messed up some of this stuff. And so we fixed it.
Do you remember some of the big ones that changed between the initial launch and after?
A lot of it was like the third part of the game. I just made it clearer, and I tried to make it smoother. And then a ton of the other puzzles where he had an issue was mostly just about clarity. And so I would just I just went through and cleaned things up a bunch. And there was a few like just straight up like typos or mistranscribed elements that needed to just get fixed. Like there was a couple of places where there's some eyes on some things that shouldn't be there, and I had to go get rid of them and stuff like that.
Oh, that's funny.
Just stuff that we missed, because it's such a big and complex thing.
For sure. Rabbit Jellyfish, by the way, starting as a programmer at Media Molecule in like a month or so, I think. So
yeah, much to my chagrin, because he's also helping me make because we're porting Lock to Unity or Steam. Right, we're gonna make a version you can purchase with several new puzzles and updates as well. But he's my lead programmer, and now I don't know if that's gonna stay true. Now he's gonna have a real job.
What is that process been like, going from oh, hey, I think I'd like to put out a version of this on PC to take in the first steps to making it happen.
I mean, I haven't done as much as I would like to do personally, but having other people involved from like design and just like should the art look, what puzzles need to change, like having those discussions has been really helpful and interesting, and just like seeing different perspectives on what I tried to make. I think the Steam version will be like a much superior experience, even if it's like the same. Like if you've played the Dreams version, you'll know how to get through you know what I mean? There won't be that many surprises, but I think it'll be just as far superior.
But you think there will be some different solutions to existing puzzles?
Maybe one or two. I think the third act will probably get complete, like the act with the book will probably get 100% overhaul.
Oh, I would love to hear what you think
it'll have this
about that.
Same solutions, though, unfortunately.
Same solutions, but you, how do you see it changing?
So and spoilers, obviously.
We're going deep now.
Yeah, spoilers, obviously. So the last half of the game, so one of the purposes of the game was, like I said, to introduce people to this style of puzzle. And usually that style of puzzle comes presented in like a one-sheet sort of format where it's like the whole puzzle's on a piece of paper and it's like a one-page, and like there's some cryptic description at the top, and then there's like some vague symbols or whatever that doesn't make any sense until you can sit down and parse it out.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted the last act of the game to be like that, to be like, oh, I'm looking at this page and it looks just like one of those real puzzles. And my versions are definitely easier than those, but I wanted it to be like, I didn't want that to, once you got to that point, you're like so confident in how to solve puzzles like this that when you looked at those, they seemed natural and you were just tackle them. Yeah. And so that way, if you ever did go after my game and go seek out these type of puzzles and see them, you'd be like, I get it. You know what I mean? Because I ramped you into it. And so that was the whole point of Act 3. The downside of Act 3 is, like, in practice when you're playing it in the game, it's a little like papery. Like, you're not really engaging in the game anymore. You're just like kind of staring at this page and you're staring at your notes and you're not really walking around the world as much. I mean, yeah, the clues are in the world and you're like transcribing stuff, but it's just not as interesting as I think it would be. So my goal is to make it like, maybe there's still the book, but you have to really use the environment as well. Like, you have to use them in tandem. So somehow making it a way that you're more engaged in the world at that point of the game and you're not just staring at a piece of paper. So that's the direction we're trying to go. It's a hard problem to solve for sure. So
absolutely, I'm looking forward to seeing the results.
And before we keep going, Falco, yeah. I know this is bad for a podcast, but Falco in chat wants to see the book journal, so just prove that it's actually a thing. you can see all the stuff.
We're looking at a notebook of graph paper.
Yeah, this graph paper notebook of just all
how many pages full?
It's all full. It's completely full. I had to start using the back of the pages too because I was running out of room.
And
I know you can't see it on stream, but it does exist.
And how many computer programs did you write?
Like three or four.
3 or 4?
Like 3 or 4, yeah. Mostly, so there's a couple puzzles like there's the map where you're drawing the journey on the map and it has to flip the numbers. So I wrote a program that was like the tile grid of the map, and it had the word up at the top, and I could click on the path and the words would change appropriately based off how it would actually work. And so I could sit there and like draw different maps or different paths see what words I could create. It was much easier to do it that way than like try to like work it out, you know?
Yeah.
So I just like made the system do itself or solve itself essentially, and then I just did it until I found words I liked and a path I liked. So I did I played with that for a week, like just like trying different paths until I found one that I thought kind of worked. So
is there a Lock 2 notebook?
There is, but I'm not showing that book.
That's fair. That's fair. Because there will be people screenshotting and trying to enhance that image.
Yeah, here it is. So,
ooh, we can see the outside. Does it? Oh, Lock 2, Roman numerals. Yeah. It says missed next to Lock 2.
Yeah, don't you didn't see that part.
Falcon Rich also asked, and I was wondering this too. You mentioned, what is it going to look like doing a PC port, essentially of Locke. Locke, most of the assets, I believe. Well, the assets are many of them come from the Dreamiverse. Many of them were made by Pixel Gorilla in Dreams. What do you think the approach will be? Are you going to make everything bespoke for a PC version?
We definitely want to like kind of up the look to a certain degree. Like part of the limitation with the original version was I put it all in one scene, and so like I definitely had to like reduce detail and like cut back on certain things that I would love to do.
Yeah.
And then there's also like I did remove a lot of things just for clarity's sake too. So, but now that we have the whole game made once, right, we can kind of see where we can flex from a visual standpoint, and so also it's just a different engine, so like we're gonna have to figure out our own visual style. Like the nice thing about Dreams is that you make a box in Dreams and you get the flex and you get soft edges and you get color variation just like for nothing. Yeah. And you can do very little work in Dreams and still have something that looks beautiful. Whereas when you're doing it in like Blender and you're trying to make like a shelf or like a countertop, it's going to look like shit for a long time, like until you can actually like make it look good. So you kind of have to discover how to do that again. Whereas like Dreams helps you out so fast, makes it so much easier to make something good quickly. And so there's just like a discovery to happen there that we're trying to.
Do you think do you see any like specific style direction to go there? I mean, do you want it to look more techy or just more realistic, more clean?
No, I think we're playing in the same space, basically. We're just, maybe it's just more high fidelity. I think the biggest thing is we want to make sure each room kind of has a stronger identity than it did in the Dreams version.
Oh,
so so we're looking at, this room may be based off architecture from this area of the country at this time period, and then this room is just a completely different era. We want it to feel like as you're moving through the house, you're also interested in just seeing the rooms, the new rooms, because of how different they will look from one another. That's something I didn't really even think about in the Dreams version when I was making it.
Yeah.
And I was pulling like 90% of the stuff from the Dreamiverse because, save time and because that's what Dreams is great at. And so I was mostly worried about picking things that look like they belong rather than trying to like make each room have an identity. So that's I think the biggest change is every room will have its own identity.
I think the overall the end result is kind of shockingly cohesive. All these disparate parts coming together.
It was a lot of just like scrolling right through all the assets until you find like the one that you're like, oh, that fits, and then you stick it in, and maybe you go in and like tweak it and like delete some stuff. Like a lot of times I would pull in a very complicated asset and I would just go in and delete a bunch of the extra stuff that the creator had made, just so I got like more of a like simplified, iconic version of the thing, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So continuing down the PC, the PC port questions. We've only talked a little bit. Like you kind of gave me the, hey, heads up, we're working on this thing. If you want to be involved.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure you wrote it, so.
I'm curious if at this stage, if you see any narrative changes that you want to make, because the puzzle structure, like if you're willing to dip into that, I'm curious if you've thought about, anything that you want to change ultimately about the narrative.
Yeah, the conversation has come up. It's largely, I think maybe we could always rewrite bits to be stronger, right? We could always do that.
Sure.
But I think one of the main issues with Locke was that I designed it and built it before we even had a story, and so the story is always going to be some lesser version than it could have been if it was written in tandem with the design. Yeah. And I don't know if there's a way to like fix that at this stage. You know what I mean? I feel like the story will always have that kind of it's done afterwards feel. It would just take too much. You just have to start over almost to make it work properly. So like we've talked about it, but ultimately like I'm happy with the story. I think the story does the main thing that I think a good story in a game should do, or it does two of the main things, right? It makes the player invested, like they keep wanting to get to the next beat, right? So there's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And then it also puts it closes the game down in a satisfying way, right? Like the ending of the story makes the game feel like it ended. I think a lot of times with a lot of puzzle games you play, especially puzzle games you play, the games just end. And you're just like, I guess it's over, and you're like, okay, I'm done, and you move on to your next game or whatever. But I really like the way we did the story in Locke, because when you get to that moment, you're just like, I'm done, I won, and you're just it feels like a finish. And so I think while the story could be like stronger as a story and more integrated as like a game story specifically, I still think it's successful in like the most important ways a story needs to be in a game. So, I mean, I'm open to changing like dialogue lines or adding more triggers for newer lines and stuff like that. But I think overall, I think we are where we are. I think where we are is a pretty good place from a story perspective. So
I agree. And I mean, we worked pretty hard to get there. Can we tell
people?
Yeah. Can you tell people what the original story was when I first got involved and heard about it at all? Do you remember what the story was at that time?
Oh man, I went through so many versions. Like I don't even know what the first version technically was.
I
mean, it was always
this
simulation.
Is like a Cthulhu type beast. That's the version I remember.
I did start there. I realized that was kind of not really the right way to go pretty quickly, though.
How would that one have ended? I want to hear how the wrong ending would have gone.
I never had a good ending. Like, that was the thing.
Oh, it's just I never had a song. Here's a monster.
It was just like, I was just like, it's just, you're just crazy or something vague and not very well thought out.
Okay,
right?
so I get it. So at the end of the game, Cthulhu pops out of the water and he goes, "You're crazy."
Yeah, precisely.
End scene.
The only thing I liked about, the only thing I wanted to do that we didn't do that was from that version of the story was that I really wanted it to be, and this was back when I had the rooms move around. Like, there's a time where I wanted the rooms to move around as you were moving around the house, so which would have been
like they changed
insane.
Places.
Yeah, like they changed places, which would have been insane. But I did want it to do like you'd go through a door and you thought you were going into a room and you'd just end up in a completely other place.
Yeah.
And then you'd turn around and you'd be back in the house again, like that kind of gimmick. I know games have done that before.
Yeah.
But like, I thought that would be interesting, but ultimately it just never fit, and it was never really. It never really said anything important about the game, and I think that's if there was one weakness about the story, and again, I don't know that it's fixable. It's not really like saying the same thing that the game is saying, because the game is about this introduction to this different puzzle genre, and like how it's different and like what's interesting about it, and the story doesn't really. It's just doing its thing. You know what I mean? It's telling a story. I don't know that it has anything important to say, which is fine. Like everything doesn't have to have like this lofty message that it's aiming for, but there's, I don't know. That's just stuff I think about.
No, that's interesting.
And there was the version I sent you early on, which was like, I wrote it and it was terrible, but where like the story was very like hard to understand, and the story itself was almost like a puzzle. Like you're like, I don't get what's happening.
Yeah.
And you had to like, as a player, you had to piece it together, which I still like that idea for a story in a puzzle game, where like the beats you're getting like in siloed like don't make any sense really until you've heard them all.
Yeah.
And then you can be like, oh, if I think about it, like, it seems like a very hard challenge, but I think that would be an interesting way to do a story in maybe another puzzle game that I might be working on.
How many projects would you say you have in development at the moment?
Just the two. I mean, if you count the, it depends on how you count them. If you count the Steam or the PC release, it's 3, but that's like a different animal. And then there's Gone Bananas, which is like the main one, and then Lock 2 is just like is just my notebook over there. So that I don't know how much that actually counts.
I mean, the first one.
Yeah.
The first one took 2 years, right? From
roughly,
from conception to completion.
I mean, it took longer if you count like me thinking about it, because I basically started designing that game when I knew Dreams was something I was interested in doing. So when it was like announced, it wasn't even released yet.
Yeah.
And I was like, what kind of game do I really want to make if I could make any game by myself? And that's basically when I started thinking about what Locke would be. So it's longer than 2 years if that's the case.
Yeah.
If you count that.
On this story, when I was writing the script, and I mean, I basically was working off of, I think we started with a version that Pixel Gorilla had written, and I know Andy Mation had put in his 2 cents here and there.
Yeah, the ending basically came from a comment thread I had with Andy about, because I had sent him my script as well, and he's like, it'd be cool if like the story ended like this, and I was like, that would be much better. And so we kind of like worked that in, so he gets credit for that bit. And then I think you took the shitty thing I wrote, like that was just very bad, and actually made it into something entertaining and like interesting to actually say. I think that's a big part too, is like you had to read all those lines, and so I wrote it in like a way that was just like, I just wrote stuff,
Yeah.
But you wrote it in a way that was like something that would be good to perform, which I think makes it better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think my goal was like, since the story was going to be presented in these fragments and you were always going to get one fragment at a time, I think my goal was to make sure there was an emotional event, something, something juicy in every one of those, whether it was subtle or a little more obvious. It was. I don't think I've talked about writing block a lot. It was a weird challenge for the reasons you've already mentioned. Like the game existed, we already had beats to match in the game, but then the script just. It got very complicated at points because we're trying to tell sort of a sequential story,
Right.
But then we have to deal with the fact that the game is designed so that you can solve many of the puzzles in whatever order you like. So you don't know exactly whether the player's going to, like, a lot of the talks we had were, hey, if the player does this, are they going to hear this before they hear this? Or
And I was like, maybe.
maybe.
Yeah, I never
and
had
then
a good
he would reply with like a probability, with a percentage. He's like, oh, no, probably, there's very little chance. There's very little chance of that outcome. And this outcome only if they cheat. They're only going to see it that way if they cheat, or if they've played it before. Like there was so many different things to account for. It was pretty nutty, and I was also. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say there was also some bits that we really wanted to write stuff for, but there was like no real good way to like know if the player did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it was like something that they just figured out, and there's no like check in the game. Like once you like say for instance you solve one of the pages in the book, you don't put that answer in anywhere.
Right.
You wrote that down on your notebook paper. So like we can't say, oh yeah, you found the answer, because we never knew.
Yeah.
There's no way to know.
That made the pacing
really,
really
made
the
weird,
pacing challenging too.
Yeah.
The other struggle I think for me in the writing was, and we talked about this one a lot too, was just, is the story too obtuse or is it too direct? Like trying to find a balance, and I think it's similar to trying to balance the puzzles in the game themselves. Right. Like it's very difficult to tell how someone else is going to read this thing.
Yeah. I think ultimately I don't know which way we landed, because like I honestly, and this is true for difficulty as well, like I don't think, I mean this is my personal opinion, but when you're designing something or writing something like this story here, I don't think your goal should be thinking about how difficult or easy the puzzle is, or like how understandable the story is. It's like the puzzle should be about like, well, what is the thing I'm trying to say? Like what is the design of the puzzle, and what is it that I want the player to learn, or what's the aha moment I want the player to have? Or in the case of the story, it's like, what is the message of the story we're trying to tell? Like, what is the purpose? What is the goal of the story itself?
Yeah.
And then after you've made it, you can assess, like, well, did that end up being hard, or did that end up being easy? Like, and then you just kind of deal with that appropriately. I don't think the right answer is to go back and try to make the puzzle hard or try to make the puzzle easy. It's just like the difficulty is the consequence of the design and not the goal of the design. And so, like, I just put the hard ones at the end and the easy ones at the beginning, you know. I mean, basically that's, but I didn't know which ones those would be ahead of time. You know what I mean?
Right.
And some of the puzzles I thought were easy were actually hard, and some of the puzzles I thought were hard were actually really easy. And so it's just one of those things. I think it's easy to get trapped in this idea of, like, well, we should write it so that it's easy to understand. And it's like, well, maybe we should just write it so that it says what we want it to say. And then if that becomes difficult to understand, we deal with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. In Locke, we were, I think we were debating between, I don't even remember. I don't even know if I could describe what the other layer was. Do you remember what the other layer was? Because I was pretty insistent on, we need to strip a layer out here. Like, there's too many layers to this reality, and I feel like that, like, there were so many versions of the character.
Yeah, we didn't strip it out. We just didn't mention it. Well, I mean, I guess that's the same thing. Like, it's still there, but we just never address it. So, like, the point of the story as I originally envisioned it, or once I knew what we were doing, basically, was that I wanted every character in the story to be the same character. Like, that was kind of the nugget. Right, the genesis of the story that we end up doing. So, like, the person talking to you is August, the computer AI program is still August, and the player is still August. Right? And so,
that's
like,
the one.
And I had written it to where I was touching on all of those elements in the script.
Yeah.
But then when you said, well, it's just too much. It was too confusing. So what we did was we just stripped out anything talking about the player being August, even though the player is still August in the final game. We just never say so. And so it's, like, kind of up to the player to, like, piece that together themselves, which I like. I think having that one bit of the story just be, like, this thing that people either realize or don't even think about. Like, the person actually playing the game needs to think, well, who am I? Who am I in this game? They have to have that question themselves, and they have to answer that question themselves.
I think my head started to hurt every time I thought about that.
Yeah,
because there's just how many other questions are there after that? Why is August? Wait, I still can't wrap my head around it.
I mean, the gist was that, like, he was stuck in a loop, like, himself.
Yeah,
was stuck in the loop, and, like, there was different versions of him in the loop. One of the versions being, like, the fresh mind wiped version, just doing the test essentially.
So it was kind of like another. So the player is another simulated version of August.
Right. He's all simulated because he's, like, spoilers. He's dead. Right. Yeah. So, like, everything is simulated. So, like, the player is the simulated version of him. The version that's trying to figure things out is another simulated version of him, and then the AI is, like, a simulated version of him. Oh. So it's like
today I'm kind of sold on it. Like, let's add another layer back. Let's add 2 more Augusts in. Let's add another player walking around trying to solve the puzzles at the same time as you, who is also August.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it worked out. I mean, I'm very happy with it. The story is one of the things I'm happy with the most, to be honest.
I know you watched a lot of playthroughs. Like
I've watched all of them, I think.
Yeah. And for a while there, it felt like you couldn't get into the Dreams category on Twitch without seeing someone playing Locke, which was really, really fun. It was. Yeah, I mean, I watched a lot of those playthroughs too, and, like, hung out with a lot of streamers that I'd never met before.
Yeah.
Was there anything in the way that people absorbed the story that surprised you or informed you from watching all those playthroughs?
I think the thing that surprises me the most is that people get scared.
Ooh,
I didn't anticipate that enough at all, really. Like, people would get scared by the voice. People would get scared by walking around the house like they thought something was going to happen.
Yeah,
and like nothing ever did. And I'm like, that's perfect. Because that was totally not we never considered that once. Not one time did we ever even think about scaring the player. And like so many people have so much like trepidation that I've watched have like they get like nervous, especially in like the error room and stuff like that. Like there's just these moments that I think really hit well. That now that I've seen that, I'm definitely going to think about that more moving forward because I think that's an interesting aspect of the game is that people are kind of get scared by it sometimes, which is cool.
I think that's what I enjoyed the most is I still remember just a few moments of people talking back.
Oh yeah, that's
some fun people like talking back to me to the voiceover when it's saying creepy stuff. I definitely wasn't thinking like scary tone at all while writing.
Yeah.
But I was thinking I want to
unsettle.
Yeah, I want people to be unsettled, confused, unsettled, a little vulnerable. Yeah, I'm really happy with how that worked out. How about the puzzles? Watching, what would you say were your biggest takeaways from the opportunity to get essentially a bunch of free playtesting after release on Twitch?
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, there's a lot of puzzles that got updated for sure.
After the RBD jellyfish effect.
Yeah, and after that too, I would watch more people play and realize some things, like the grid on the wall in the one room. I made it so it actually moved, so like you didn't have to. That was an interesting one because I got so caught up in the idea that I made both words work without having to edit the board at all. Like that was the cool thing, but then like people wouldn't figure it out, so I had to make the board move, and then it kind of. My thing that I cared about went away, but it ultimately didn't matter. I just got hung up on it.
Yeah.
But then a lot of the puzzles, again, like I just underestimated or overestimated the difficulty. Like the game room is a great example, which I thought was probably the easiest room in the game. But then I've seen people just like hard stuck on the game room puzzle for like hours.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I still don't understand what's happening in those moments because I'm like, just look at it. Like, but people.
I was one of those people.
Yeah.
I remember testing the game room. I felt so frustrated because it looked like the kind of thing that I should be able to solve quickly. And once you that's right. Okay, I tested a far more evil version of the game room.
You tested it when I had it the other way around.
No, it was 4 games of chess, right?
Yeah, the original game room was 4 games of chess, and the secret puzzles were like hidden games out in the other rooms. Like there would be like a tic-tac-toe thing on a tree, and then there would be a...
oh boy, I didn't even get to that part.
That was in design. I didn't actually like put that in. But the original version was the chessboards in the room, right? And it was supposed to be like the hardest room in the game. So the chessboards in the game room, and then there would be the other games would be strewn about the level, just like hidden in a place. Like in the math room, there would have been like the hangman just like written on one of the chalkboards.
Yeah.
But like I realized how problematic that version of the game would be, and then once I realized that flipping it made it make so much more sense. Right, putting the 4 different games in the game room, the easier games, right, and then putting all the chessboards around the map. I just love that version much better, and so like I just did that instead.
My favorite thing about it is that it spread out the pain. I owned a chessboard as a kid. Like I played enough chess to know how the pieces move, to know the rules, to know the rules more or less. But when it came to the chess puzzles in Locke, I very much disliked them. I did not like, because there was something about looking at all these pieces, and even though you laid out pretty,
they're even easier now.
You simplified it after that, but like looking at all these pieces and thinking about the possibilities, how many different possibilities of the way these things could move, and spoiler if you haven't played it, the pattern that the pieces move on the board forms a letter, right? It sounds pretty straightforward. I think it's a good puzzle, but I just wonder if Morse code and Pigpen, if you don't know those, you can immediately understand them. chess, even if you like look up the rules to chess, if you're not familiar in the first place, I think you just are going to get lost on those puzzles.
Yep.
I think I still have feelings. Would you put that same puzzle in Lock 2?
Nope. But it is going to be in the PC version. But our kind of solve for that is I think we're going to add a book that kind of outlines the basic rules. And B, we've made it so that you can actually play the board.
What?
You can move the pieces on the board in the PC version, and the computer will move back against you.
What?
And so, if you don't know how to play, you can literally brute force those puzzles just by moving the pieces yourself. Like, you can just trial and error until you win, and then you'd be like, oh, okay, what does that mean? You know what I mean? And none of the checkmates are really that hard, that there's like not a lot of options move if you actually try to move pieces. So like, I think it makes the puzzles a lot more approachable, and it does the thing I really wanted it to do the most, which is like I want the game to introduce people to different elements. Like, I'm introducing them to, this puzzle, this type of puzzle. I wanted to introduce them to different ways of looking at things, the perspective. And then like chess is a big part of, I love chess. It's a thing I've, played for years and years and years. There's no way I wasn't going to make a puzzle game without a chess puzzle in it. It's just like, that just is never going to happen. And so I wanted it to be a good, letting the player move the pieces like really does the thing I want it to do ultimately, which is like let people play chess and introduce them to chess. And then if you know chess, you can just look at the board and you don't even have to move the pieces and you can figure it out. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good solve. It's a good middle ground. It is a very hard puzzle, but like, I'm not afraid of having hard puzzles in the game. I think ultimately most people get there even if they don't know how to play chess. So.
Yeah. I think the current iteration works pretty well. The earlier ones, I mean, just the difference between removing a couple pieces from the board, from my brain, made it a lot more digestible. But what you're saying about the computer, the game moving in response to you, I really like I think that's a good solve for the design of the puzzle, but I really like that it gives the environment more personality and voice in the game. And I feel like it would be a really creepy moment too, because the game, the scene is fairly static. The moment when it does move something in response to you, I think would be a very chilling moment in all the stillness.
Right, and I have versions of all those chess puzzles where if you make the wrong move, the computer makes the same move against you because you're one move away from losing already.
Yeah.
And so the response is basically the same if you make a mistake. So it'll be a good teaching. It'll be good for teaching because it's just or teaching you how to play because you move a piece, you lose. You move a piece, you lose. You move a piece, you lose. And you're like, okay, I can't move any of those pieces. Basically, it becomes very straightforward. Okay, this is the only piece I can move where I don't lose, and then maybe there's more steps. So I think it'll balance out nicely as well as it could be. There's always that problem that if you don't know how to play chess, it's a harder puzzle. Just at some point, I have to give up trying to make the puzzles work for everybody. I mean, if you don't speak English, the whole game is bad.
Would you how many hours do you think it would take to make this game in a different language?
I don't even think it's possible, to be honest. It would be a different game. It would have to be a different game because it's so based off English 4-letter words.
Yeah.
Not
so
even
much
all
would have to change.
It would be a nightmare. I don't even know what you do, really.
Yeah.
It would be a different
game. You start a
game.
new game. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's just I think almost every puzzle has this problem because they're all based on words, ultimately, and so they're just never going to get out of that.
If someone, I'm curious if you've taken a look at the scoreboard to lock. I'm sure you have, and if
Not
you've
recently.
roughed out completion rate is a really, I don't know if you've roughed out the completion rate or had any idea of how far people have gotten, if that's given you any information that was useful or if you've kind of seen what you'd expect. in that metric?
Completion rate, the last time I checked, and it's been a long while, was definitely higher than I anticipated. So the main, I haven't looked at it recently, so this might not hold true if anybody goes and crunches the numbers. But the last time I crunched the numbers, like there is like a threshold. Like I think 50% of people like just drop off, like they just don't continue
Quickly.
right? So you will see, like after the halfway mark, there's like nobody gets anywhere. But there is like a threshold around like once you get a certain percentage, you're either getting to like 79% or you're getting to 100. Right, like there's like a big gap between 79 and the next percentage, or like between one of the. So it's like once you're invested in the game, you usually go the whole distance, or you go almost the whole distance because you get really jammed up on the really hard stuff at the end.
Yeah, I think once you've put some real mental sweat into solving a few of these, I think the feeling of investment is very personal. I think just the journey of solving them can feel very personal, and I think, I think I could definitely see people feeling strongly invested.
Like once you get a few wins under your belt, you're like, okay, we're going through all this. It's like the people that get like, there's a lot of people who open the front door and don't do anything else. They don't even get the key, right? So like, I don't know what that's about. There's a lot of people that don't even open the front door, which I didn't think that front door puzzle was that hard, but
I have watched some people struggle with that one.
yeah.
And
but I think that's a good, like, it's an easy puzzle once you find what to look for, but it's like, I think it's a good litmus test, because if you get jammed up by that one and you don't want to continue, well, it's not the game for you, probably.
Yeah.
Nothing else is going to be as easy as that puzzle.
You were not meant to enter this house.
Yeah, well, you're just not going to have a good time. It's not that you're not smart enough to do it. You just, like, this isn't for you. It's just not the thing you're interested in doing.
Definitely.
Because people who, like, it is a good, like, kind of test to see if, like, do you really want to play this game, sort of thing.
I mean, on the subject of the difficulty, something, and I've talked about this on stream a lot, I think, but something I thought was a surprise after Locke was released. It was a surprise to me just how good of a stream game it is. Like,
yeah, that's surprising to me as well.
Puzzles can go any which way. Like, I wouldn't say puzzles in general are good or bad stream games. They can be all over the place.
Well, so I think I know the distinction here.
Yeah.
And this is part of like the reason I made this game. And I just didn't realize it had this effect. Because most puzzle games, I think in general, like obviously not all of them, but most puzzle games has an element of like the solving element is like a mechanical element or like a procedural element, right? You do this, then you do this.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, I liken it to like a Rubik's Cube. What you're supposed to do with the Rubik's Cube. You're supposed to make all the different sizes the same color. And the puzzle is you like turning everything properly. And I think most puzzle games are about turning everything properly, let's say, and not so much about like every side is supposed to be the same color. So I wanted to make a puzzle game that was more about, and this is kind of a puzzle no-no, but like trying to make a puzzle game that was more about figuring out that the puzzle was about making all the sides the same color. And then once you knew that, you could just make them all the same color, right? The turning things was the easy part. So that's a long way of saying, so what happens in the stream version is the puzzles end up being like you can just look at the thing, you know, or you're just looking at things. And so everybody can participate because the puzzle is not about twisting 5 knobs in the correct direction, or it's not about like sliding blocks in the correct order or placing lasers down and pointing them in the correct way. It's about just understanding. You know, you're just trying to understand what the game wants you to do. And everybody can be involved in that, you know, once they've seen everything, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's why it works.
You can feel very involved as a viewer. As you're talking about that, I'm thinking about other types of puzzle games, and you know, when I'm watching someone play like some grid-based movement style puzzle game, and failing to get the solution, and as a viewer, I just want to try things. Give me the damn controller, because
right.
No, we gotta try stuff. We gotta let's go this direction. and it's impossible. It's impossible for anyone in chat to have an impact on that game.
Right.
And in Locke, what I thought was really neat to see every time was people. I mean, everyone, finds it difficult. Like I never saw anyone go, "Oh, these puzzles are easy," and breeze through them. But when the going gets tough, there's a dialogue that starts to happen, and people are throwing ideas around, and it feels like a constructive, cooperative experience.
That's what the puzzle is. That's the puzzle of the game. Like that's what the puzzles are based around. Is that moment? Is you? And that's what puzzle. That's what I love about Puzzle Hunt puzzles, and that's why I wanted to make this game, is because it's not so much about the procedure. I mean, there's still procedure, right? You still have to do the actions, but the procedure is not where the puzzle lies.
Yeah.
The puzzle lies before that. And usually that's kind of like a huge no-no because you don't want players to like look at something and not understand it and then not do it, right?
Right.
But I was like, can I make that work? Can I make a game where like looking at it and not understanding it is the puzzle? And I think that's why people like it too, because it is different. It feels different than what you normally do with puzzle games.
Yeah.
And that's why like when people suggest certain edits to puzzles, they kind of lean that way too. Like you can make the puzzle be like this, where you're like moving these dials in the right order. And I just don't really want to go that direction really, because I don't think that's what the game is about.
We're conditioned. We're conditioned to want dials and levers and switches and, tile puzzles.
It does make the game feel static though, right? Like, cause you're not like manipulating elements that much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
it also makes it easier to make.
You really look at it. I mean,
yeah, you really look at it.
I can't think of another video game environment that I have really looked at as much as this. I mean, every little detail can you think of I haven't played all the puzzle games. I mean, if I were to go play Myst or something like that, am I going to find a similar experience?
Return of the Obra Dinn is my favorite puzzle game. It used to be The Witness, but I think after a lot of thinking, The Witness is the most formative puzzle game for me because about what it's doing. Like the real thing that Witness is doing is like it's showing that the games are really about this dialogue between, at least in my opinion, I could be wrong, but to me, it's like the game is about this dialogue between the designer and the player, right? The designer is trying to show the player something, and it's trying to get them to understand it, right? And that's just that's not true for puzzle games. It's true for all games, right? It's just different. And so, like, I never really thought about it like that, and so I like thinking about games that way. It's like, what am I trying to make the player do, and how do I communicate to them that idea in a way that's interesting, right? And so, but Return of the Obra Dinn is a puzzle game about just looking at stuff.
Really?
And so, yeah, it is literally just like the whole point of the game is you are like an insurance adjuster and you're on a pirate, you're like a magical insurance adjuster and you're on a pirate ship where everybody's died. And there's like 100 people or it's like 60 people or some 80 people. I don't remember, but there's a lot of people that died. And your whole point of the game is for you to assign an identity to every dead body and also assign how they died. That's the whole game. You're just trying to put a name to a body and say how they died. And the only way you can do that is by looking at shit. And so I just really enjoyed it because it's the kind of game where it seems impossible at first because you're just looking at dead bodies and you're like, I don't know. Like,
there's freaking 100 of them.
Yeah, like I don't know what's going on. But then when you actually try to do it and you actually try to understand what you're looking at, it comes. It's there to be found. And it's not always there in the same way. And it's always like these interesting little nuggets. It really makes you feel like a detective. It really makes you feel like you're figuring something out.
Yeah. And
it's super satisfying. And it's not about like writing in the book is not hard to do. Like once you know who it is, you just put the name in. You know, that's the actions you are taking are very, very simple. The game is all in your head, and it's all you just thinking and looking at stuff. And I think that's just so genius how well it's pulled off in that game. It's the kind of game where it's like, man, I wish there were more games like this because I feel so rewarded.
Yeah.
More so than like when I like a puzzle game about pushing blocks. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, I got it. I just feel like I'm done. Like I accidentally got it. I don't feel like I'm being smart. Whereas like Obra Dinn really makes you feel like you're doing the thing. I don't know. It's definitely something.
Do you think someone playing that on? Do you think it might have a similar flow on stream to Lock? Do you think that a chat might want to participate?
I've seen people stream it and it go very poorly.
Yeah.
I think it is like on the extreme side of what that is doing, because it is harder as a player, as a viewer, to come up with ideas because the details are so nuanced and you're really having to look at a lot of different things at once to put things together.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you couldn't do it as a viewer. It's just much, much harder. Like in Lock, the puzzle is really surface level. You're looking at all the information like on one screen. And you can kind of just stand there. Whereas in Oberdin, you have you're looking through the passenger manifest, you're looking through memories. Like the big gimmick is like you can look at a dead body and it pulls up the memory of how they died, and it's just a still image, or it's like a still scene. You can like move around and look at it, and you're just like looking at facial features, and you're looking at you're hearing dialogue and stuff, and so it's a lot of just like putting clues together. So it's much harder from a chat perspective, I think. So I've seen it go very poorly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just wrote it down because you've recommended that game. I've heard some other people. I mean, I've just heard nothing but good things about it. Every time it comes up, I hear some glowing review, and yet until you described it just now, I wasn't sold enough to go check it out. But that sounds like a
kind of
great
game
setup.
that you can. Yeah, it's the kind of game you can bounce off real easy because, like I said, at first it feels like there's nothing to go on, and you're just looking at everything, and then you just keep finding new stuff to look at, and you're just like, I haven't solved anything, and I feel like all I have is more stuff, and it just feels impossible. But then once you start, it really is this weird moment, at least for me it was, where like the moment I stopped thinking it was impossible and started really, really looking and piecing things together, like then it's just started clicking, and like all the answers started coming really fast, and I was just like, oh man, this is so good. Like I can't believe this works.
Just hearing you describe it that way sounds super satisfying.
It is, but it's the kind of thing maybe not on stream.
Right. I mean, honestly, it sounds like the kind of thing I would enjoy more off stream. Like I like the kind of game I can just sort of get lost in. That sometimes you're staring at a screen for 5 minutes, and it sounds like you're probably. I mean, it's not like it's a 2D game, right? But it sounds like there's some exploration. Some. Are you?
No, it's not. It's 3D. It's 3D.
Oh, it is a 3D game.
Yeah, it's 3D.
It's the one with the monochrome graphics, right?
Yeah. But it's 3D. You're moving around a 3D space.
Okay.
It's really wild to look at.
Huh.
It's like it's all
interesting.
I think it's called like 1-bit graphics because there's only the one color.
Yeah.
Right. So like I don't know, Lucas Pope, the designer of that game, who also made Papers, Please, is just like a genius. I don't know, like to be able to make that game. And I've heard him talk about making that game, and he didn't even know what that game was going to be as he was making it.
Really?
Like that's how like I think that's a good place to be when you're designing a game, because you're kind of like having a conversation with the design too, because the design is basically saying, I really want to be this, and you're like, okay, I'll make it. You start tweaking the game, and then the game is telling you as a designer what it should be as well. And I think we could segue into Gone Bananas, but we had that moment just recently with like the hunter in Gone Bananas.
Yeah.
Whereas like once we added it, like the game was like, oh yeah, we really want this, and so now it's like part of the game. And so yeah.
I want to go to Gone Bananas, but before we go there, I want to since you're having a fanboy moment, and since you mentioned The Witness, I would be. Yeah. You said it was your most formative puzzle game.
Yeah.
I just
from
listened
from a design. Yeah.
I just listened to an interview with Jonathan Blow, the creator of The Witness, just a few days ago, and it actually got me thinking. I might like to replay it. It strikes me as a more replayable puzzle game than most. Lock, I mean, because the answers are memorable, right? Like the reason I'm not walking around this scene and giving you a little visual variety is, well, my game is reset and I don't want to systematically spoil every single puzzle in the game for you, which I would have to do to show you the rooms. I mean, I could take you inside. You can see, you can see the optical illusion, appreciate some of this, but once you've played Lock, you know how to beat Lock. and there is no way to get any of that experience back.
Right.
I'm curious. Yeah, I'm
I
curious.
feel the same way about The Witness, though. But yeah.
Oh, did you feel like it would just you couldn't see yourself going back to play that one again?
I mean, I've played it multiple times, but to me, again, like the individual puzzles in The Witness, you will forget because they're not the kind of things that are easy to remember. But drawing the lines themselves is not the puzzle in that game. Like that is you manifesting your ideas of your knowledge of the puzzle in the world, right? It's you understanding the rules is the puzzle of that game. Like the puzzle of The Witness is you understanding the rules. Once you understand the rules, the only reason the panels exist in The Witness is for you to prove that you understand the rules, right?
Yeah.
And so like panels,
some of them require you to get creative with the rules, right? I mean, some of them.
Well, they require you to understand every nuance of the rules, is what I'd say. Like,
yeah.
Do you they're often sequential, right? So it's like the first one's a little easier and they get harder, but they get harder in a way where it's like, do you understand the rules? And you're like, yes, and you do it. And then the next one was like, do you really understand the rules? And you're like,
yes,
I think so. And you do it. And then the next one's like, but did you know this about the rules? And then you're like, no, I didn't, but now I do. And
I forgot. I forgot that
a lot
about
of
the
that
journey.
There is several puzzles that are like filler-esque, I guess, but like most of them I don't think are that way. And like that to me is the reason you play that game, is like to have that understanding thing happen to you.
Yeah.
And once you've had that happen once, like it's not the kind of thing that you can you'd have to like forget. So it's really hard to have that experience again. But you can still play those puzzles.
I feel like I've been away long enough. What year was that game? I mean, it feels like forever ago, and it feels like just yesterday at the same time. I have no idea. But I feel like I've been away long enough that there might be a lot of discovery there. Coming back to it a second time, I forgot about how satisfying that experience was. Just the progress from the simple puzzle where you go, the rule is obviously this. And then, oh no!
And you're like, nope,
no. And you just catch yourself making assumptions like, oh well, this is how it works, and you test it, and it works. Right. And then the next puzzle, you're like, I don't get anything. I'm just repeating exactly what you said, but it was I had forgotten.
That's the game.
How good that cycle was.
I mean, and that's like different than like a puzzle, like a Sudoku puzzle, or like a Sokoban puzzle where you're pushing blocks around or whatever, or like lots of other puzzle games.
Yeah.
You don't really have as much of those moments. I mean, it's sort of there, but it's mostly like a really good example of this is what is it called? Oh, now I'm blanking. There's a puzzle game that's kind of like The Witness in a way, but you like have lasers and you're shooting them at doors. Shit, I can't remember the name of the
laser bounce.
Talos Principle. Thank you, Pixel Juice. So Talos Principle is I think a very bad puzzle game. Like a lot of people love it, but I dislike it very much because to me there is no learning in Talos Principle. Like you get exactly what everything does immediately as you find it, right? Like every new equipment you get, you shoot the laser at the thing and it opens the door. The only puzzle every puzzle in Talos Principle is just about you doing everything in the correct order and putting everything in the correct place, right? And it is sort of a deductive thing where you're like, okay, if I do this, then I can do this, then I can do this. And that's fine, but it's not interesting to me. It's more of like, I'll just keep trying things until I get the right answer, or right. Like, oh, I see it immediately and I just have to do it. And there may be a wrinkle or two here and there, but it's not the kind of game that I feel like I'm very interested in as I'm playing it. Like I'm not having those moments like we were just talking about where you feel like the game is having a dialogue with you and you're saying like, I understand you, game, and then the game is like, nah, no you don't, and then like you're just completely wrong, and like and you have these like epiphanies constantly, and those are kind of puzzle games I like, and I think Talos Principle completely misses that. Like it just doesn't even know that that's a thing. From what I feel when I play it. Like, I don't think designers even considered that. They're just trying to they're like, how many obfuscation steps can we put in between the player and the solution? Like,
Yeah.
and you're just trying to like figure that out. And some people like that. A lot of people love that game. I just like when I played it, I was just like, I don't get it. Like, I beat it. I like 100%ed it, and I still was just like, every puzzle just feels like the last puzzle. Just more of it, basically.
I got one last lock related question, and then we should move on to this game. That's it's yesterday's news. No one wants to hear about lock.
I know, right? It's almost been a year now. So.
I know, that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
So I'm curious if someone is new to the puzzle hunt style of puzzle and they enjoyed Lock, they played it all the way through, what would be the next thing you'd point them to get a similar fix?
Oof, like to get a similar fix is hard because I don't know of any introductory puzzle hunts style puzzles. All of like there's puzzledpint.com, puzzled like past tense pint.com. You can go there, and those puzzles are like the easier side. They are still very hard, but they also have rankings like 1 through 5 star, right? So you can like kind of pick and choose the easy ones and see if you can figure it out. But I think most people will still bounce off those because they take a considerable amount of investment to like get through. And like there are a lot of them I can't do. Like I'm just like I don't get it. But it is interesting. Like all the old puzzles, you can go look at the answers, and so I still find there's some value in looking at the answers to the ones you don't understand, because then you like look at it and you're like, you either go, oh, that's so stupid, I never would have figured that out, or you go, oh, that's really really clever, and like I feel dumb that I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So
that might be the worst feeling in puzzle games to me is the moment where I look something up and go, of course!
Right, exactly.
Oh, nothing makes me angrier at myself than when I look up a puzzle and I know I could have gotten it.
Right.
So very frustrating.
Yeah, so you can just Google it and look around and see if you can find something that's your cup of tea. But I do Puzzled Pint. I try to do every time they come out with a new one. I try to do as many of them as I can, but it's tough. They have a lot in common with like ARG, like augmented reality things that people have done in the past.
I'm about to ask you if you're starting your own alternate reality game, because your camera went crazy in the most interesting way. It was just,
oh, did it?
Yeah, just like static and shapes and colors, and I'm looking for clues inside it, and it's back now.
Okay, good.
But that was outrageous. I'm sorry, I totally derailed you. What were you saying?
No, we're good. We're good. I was just saying, like, there's no real introductory level sort of this stuff.
Gotcha.
That's why I was trying to make it, because I was like, I feel like there's space for this.
This is as close as it gets to the easy version.
Well, I mean, if I make another one, we'll have another one.
If?
I mean, I'm not going to commit.
That's smart. That's smart. That you've got a big empty notebook ahead of you.
Yeah, basically.
Well, how did you go from living in this puzzle realm for 2 years plus to deciding to make a game about monkeys and gorillas and bananas? Let's go there.
Okay, so I don't know. I'm not 100% sure.
Thanks for being on the show today. It's been no.
It started out as like, I want to make something simple. and then it went off the rails. So I've always had this inkling to like, I wanted to make a roguelike, because I felt like it's a cool genre. I think Dreams needs games like this too, where it's like about games about replayability, if not roguelikes, right?
Yeah.
And so I had made like I was making a Snake game at one point, like just classic Snake.
I remember.
And I was like, man, it would be cool to make a Snake roguelike, where like you get power-ups and the levels get harder, etc., or something like this. And I started to do that and realized there wasn't really enough design space without making like a whole new type of game. And so I started making a whole new type of game, which was so I used Pac-Man as kind of the I used Pac-Man as kind of the nugget of where to start. I was like, I'll just make a Pac-Man game where you're a gorilla and you're trying to get bananas instead of pellets. And then I kind of just iterated from there. And it was supposed to start out simple, but I just kept getting more and more ideas about how to make it a cool roguelike. And here we are. I just keep adding stuff, basically.
Yeah, anytime we talk about it, like I'm always weighing. I'm like,
well,
do I want to make any
version.
suggestion that's going to that's going to add features to this? Like I'm always hesitant to make suggestions that are gonna, but it keeps growing and I can't stop it, and it's not my job to stop it. I'm just here to help out and enjoy it.
I don't think you're playing the newest version. You have like the robot hunter on, which I think he should be off by default.
I put it in a collection a little earlier. It's probably.
Oh, that's probably why.
It needs an update. Yeah, we're looking at the game on stream right now, and so there was a hunter.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That was added recently, and yeah, we were just looking at a cyborg version of that hunter that shoots a laser beam. If you're wondering how complicated this has become, I need to punch that hunter. Oh, damn it! Get back here!
Yeah.
Oh no!
Yeah. So the interesting, and this is what you touched on before, was like sometimes if you're designing, when you're making a game, it's really good to listen to the game as you're making it to understand what it is. Like, I know it's easy to get caught up in just like what kind of game you want to make, or like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you're just like, well, I'm making this game and it's going to, and you know, going in, it's going to have this thing and it's going to have this thing. And it really has these things because I really like those things about the games I enjoy. And so you start making the game and you just start putting those things in. And I think that's how you get like trapped into making maybe like less fun games.
Yeah.
Because what you really need to do is like examine and listen to the game that you're making as you're making it. And so with the hunter was always supposed to, so you're a gorilla moving around like a Pac-Man like grid picking up bananas. And the whole point of every level is to get X number of bananas or you die, essentially. And so we're putting things into the game to make it harder to collect the bananas, to make you play differently, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things is that between every level you get cursed with a random curse that makes the game harder in some different way. And one of those curses was the hunter. And the hunter is just this character that moves around the board, and when he sees you, he shoots at you. And so you kind of have to watch where he is, make sure you're not lined up with him for too long, and then move when he shoots. And he was just supposed to be like a random curse that you got, you know, like you didn't see him every time you played. But then the moment I added him in, and you specifically called this out when you were playtesting it, you're like, man, the hunter really makes the game like a lot more fun. Like it is harder, like he does make the game harder, but it's so much more interesting to now have this concern that you're having to think. It makes the game more interesting. And so I was like, well, we really just need to have him be part of the game then, instead of be this curse that you randomly get. Because if it makes the game that much better, then it needs to be about the game.
Yeah, I felt like just having one element on the map that is moving and requires your attention just made a big difference, because you don't care about the monkeys until they take your bananas. You know, they're kind of set dressing until the moment they've got something you need, and then you might be chasing.
And they're like
down.
close to you, right? Like there's kind of like a proximity.
Yeah.
Like if the monkey's on the other side of the map, you're like, you don't even care. You're just like, he's over there taking all my stuff.
Lost cause.
But when he's near you and you see that he's holding 4 bananas, you're like, get over here. You're going to punch him and take all his bananas, right? Like that's kind of the exciting element of the game, is when there's a monkey near you with lots of bananas that he's holding, and eventually they eat the bananas and you can't get them back. So like once you're near one, you're like really trying to get him because you don't want him to eat it before you punch him, you know, because if he eats them all, you don't get any of them. And so there's only like this proximity that you were around your character that you were worried about. But now that the hunter's in the map, you kind of always have to have this awareness that where the hunter is at all times, because he could just stop and start shooting at you. And so
cross
you really
map
have to
you,
pay
right?
attention.
I mean, he can shoot through walls right now.
Yeah. So that was he can shoot. The regular hunter can see like half the distance of the board, and then the robot hunter can see the whole distance of the board. So the robot can like shoot you from across the whole. The robot's really bad. He's really dangerous.
I noticed that. I did notice that.
Yeah.
This game has gotten, it's been an interesting one to play test. It's like the exact opposite of Locke.
Yeah.
Like when I
like
started playtesting this game, Pixel Gorilla he invited a bunch of people to playtest and just to do as many rounds as you wanted so that he could get data on the eight, I would think, different monkeys and make sure that none of them were spiking in any area. None of them were super, we're much better at getting bananas than the other ones. And every stage, every update since then, it just gets harder and harder and harder. I think I'm still playing it sort of casually, like, whatever. And now I just die every time I play.
Yeah, you have to pay attention. I mean, like, this is obviously a test level. We'll ramp up the difficulty in a nice way, so that way the first level isn't just brutal.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure that from a difficulty perspective, and this kind of goes back, like, I'm not really thinking about the difficulty, to be honest. Like, I'm just putting things in the game. And so, like, what I wanted to do is that your awareness and understanding of everything that's happening has to grow over time for you to be good at the game. So, like, when the game gets hard when it requires more focus, right? Not like the individual elements aren't hard themselves, right? It's very easy to
just
dodge
like one stick and one button input.
Right. So I'm not trying to make the game harder. I'm just trying to make it so that, like, when there's more things happen, like, to be good at the game, to, like, actually perform well, you have to really be paying attention. And if you pay attention, you can perform well. And if you understand the nuances, that's the other thing, I think. That's a big thing about roguelikes is, like, a lot of you getting better at the game is you just understanding the different things about the game, like knowing what to do and what things are.
Yeah.
That's like the kind of meta progression of what roguelikes are really about. I know nowadays, like, roguelikes have, like, a lot of meta currency elements that just make you flat out stronger over time. Like, every time you fail, you get, like, some points, and you spend those points to get more health.
Right.
And so the next time you run, you're just better. You're just tougher to kill, right? You can make less mistakes. But really, what they're truly about is that, like, you're doing badly at the beginning because you don't know what you're supposed to do to be doing well, right? And just by iterative play, you kind of learn, okay, this guy does this, so I know what to do when that guy's there. And, like, this trap does this, so I know how to avoid that. And so it's just like you just accumulate knowledge. And so that's the route I'm going. I don't really plan to do any meta progression.
Pixel, do you think, would you mind if we take a short intermission? A couple minutes here and come right back to chat more about roguelikes?
Sure.
All right, we'll be right back.
Let's do it.
I'm excited to talk about roguelikes because I've been flipping out over Hades for the past month plus, still.
Great game.
Yeah. Is that, let's see. Were you, what are the games that are feeding into this? Hades, obviously. I mean, I think you were one of many people recommending that to me for months and months and months while I painfully, I ignored you.
I mean, I played the Binding of Isaac, like, back when that was a new game. And I enjoyed that one.
That's pretty old. I mean, that's like more than 10 years old, isn't it?
Yeah, but they keep releasing new versions with updates and stuff, so it's like there's insane amount of stuff in it now. I don't know if it's like a great game, but it is, like, a lot of people don't like it. It's like a bullet hell sort of game. So if you're not into bullet hells, it's kind of rough, right?
Yeah.
But I really like, it does the thing where, like, it doesn't have meta progression really. I mean, you unlock different starting characters, but every run is basically your start from zero, and it's really about like the items you get and stuff like that. So like I think from that game I kind of took like what I think a roguelike is really about. Like there's two kind of slices to a roguelike. There's like the moment to moment gameplay element where that in order to be good at it, you have to exhibit like lots of skill. Can't make mistakes. You have to be aware of everything that's happening and understand things.
Yeah.
And then right, so that's kind of like you learn that over time. You get better with that over time. That's one, and that's kind of in general with a lot of games too. Like a lot of games just have that kind of, this is how you be good at it sort of thing. But then and the other element is like this randomness, kind of like the way you improve or the way the game fights back is random, right? So you improve with random power-ups and the game fights back with like random, like either like the rooms get harder randomly or like the enemies are random so they're harder, the bosses are random, or like curses or stuff like this. Like so there's like this combination of you having to like learn and get good at the game in like a consistent manner and pay a lot of attention and know all these things, butted up against like you never know what the game's going to do to you. Like, is it going to give you good stuff or is it going to give you a bunch of bad stuff? So you kind of like always having to like play this game of like adjusting on the fly to what the game is doing, like play at the optimum strategy for like the things you're being presented. And so like that's like what I kind of took from that game and what I'm trying to put here. And then I think the thing about Hades that I am taking from is and I guess this is Binding of Isaac too, is like the interesting power-ups, like the things that you want to do to advance your character, the things that are interesting are the things that make you think about or play the game differently and not so much just like make you better. I mean, there is kind of that aspect of it too. You just want to be really powerful, but I think there needs to be some consideration for like, oh, this makes me want to play the game in this completely other way that's like not the norm. And so I think that's kind of what's fun. That's where the fun is found, is when like players, like the game never tells you that, you know what I mean? Like it just kind of, like the players connect the dots, and that's where they have like the really enjoyable moment. They're like, oh, wait a minute. If I do this and this, I can do this completely other strategy that is just like bonkers. And
so what would an example be for Gone Bananas? I mean, I could tell one, but it's more fun to ask you.
Yeah, it's difficult with this game because it's very linear in like the tactic.
Yeah,
like there's not a lot of avenues, and I'm struggling with that from a design perspective. But like there are some things where it's like currently if you play the game, there's like these boxes that you can break, and they drop a random item. Like the random little power up that lasts for a short time, or like maybe it drops like 5 bananas or something like this. But you really have to commit to breaking the boxes because it takes a while to break them. And then there's just the monkeys grabbing bananas and running away from you. So currently there's like kind of like these 3 avenues you can consider as a player. It's like, do I just run around the map and pick up all the bananas on the ground as fast as possible? Do I like chase down the monkeys when they have them, or do I just ignore them? And like, or do I risk the time loss, because every level is basically timed? Do I risk the time loss of breaking a box and hope it drops something good? And so like what I'm doing now is trying to like make power-ups and curses that kind of adjust your evaluation of those 3 things, right? So it's like I'm making curses that make it, and power-ups that are like, oh, punching things seems like a much better strategy now than it used to. And like, oh, breaking boxes is now a much better strategy than it used to. So just like making it change the, how you see each of those avenues. And so I haven't really hit on like really exciting, like what I would call like counter strategies where you're like doing things that feel completely backwards yet. But like I'm listening to the game and hoping I find something.
I want to come up with a way to make the player avoid bananas to get bananas.
That I find that thought too. I'm just like, you're just like, how do you do that without it? Like, so the thing you don't want to do, I think, is like literally make a power up that says that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then you're not giving that player the moment. You're just changing the game on them. Like what I want to
yeah.
do is make a power up where it's like you're like, I don't understand if this power up's good or what, but like, or it's a combination of power ups where all of a sudden like you're like, wait a minute, if I don't collect bananas, that's good. Like, but you can't like actually like explicitly do that because then it's no fun.
Right.
You
It's
know,
like you need to have some other, you need to keep the player moving in some other way, give the player something to do other than sit in one place.
Yeah, that was specifically a hard one to do, but more importantly, it's like you want the player to realize that without you having to tell them. You know, you want the player to realize that's a strategy
Right.
without the game just straight up like putting that strategy on the table. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's so a good example of this, or one example that I'm doing is like there's a curse that makes it so the monkeys just drop banana peels like crazy, and banana peels are so when a monkey eats a banana, it has a percentage chance to leave a banana peel behind, and you slip on them when you pick them up or when you walk over them, and it like delays you, which is really bad. And so there's a curse where the bananas are just like like dropping banana peels like crazy, right? And so I was gonna make a power up that lets you when you punch a banana peel, it has a chance to become a banana, right? So, or something of that nature, like you're cleaning up the, I don't know what, like recycling or something. I'm gonna call it something like that. So on the surface, it seems like, you know, that's just a nice to have power up because it lets you turn, you know, this thing that's kind of a negative on the board into something that's like I can get rid of it and potentially it gives me a banana.
Yeah.
And so then, you know, and you have that experience as the player. You get that power up a couple times, and you're like, "Oh, that power up's okay. It's kind of nice." But then one run will happen where you'll get the curse, where they're dropping banana peels everywhere, and you'll get that power up, and you'll be like, "Wait a minute, I can just let the monkeys eat all the bananas and punch all of these banana peels they're leaving behind, and that's way more effective than trying to get all the bananas." And so then you're playing this game. You're playing a very different game where you're you're just like letting the board fill up with banana peels, and you're just like running around hitting all the banana peels. And you're doing a completely different thing than you used to do. But like I don't tell you that. Like you have to get both those things in concert, and then you have this moment where you're like you're doing something completely different. And
That
so
is,
like, I'm trying to.
yeah.
I'm trying to build in a lot of that stuff.
That's one of the funnest things in Hades to me are those surprise moments of like I didn't see the interplay between these two perks coming, and now I'm, like you said, playing the game in a whole different way. Og the Enigma says plant bananas, grow trees, more bananas, profit. And you know, as soon as I saw grow trees, I thought, what if one of the boons was you could plant a tree that would grow a bunch of bananas, but you had to defend that tree from the monkeys in order to collect them. Just spitballing, as long as we're...
I actually had the idea for
features.
trees. I do have the idea. I'm going to put trees in the game. That's a feature I haven't added yet. So like trees will be basically like boxes, but you can see what's in them, and they only have fruit, right? So like you can see the fruit on the tree, right?
Oh, okay.
And so like they're like boxes because to get the fruit you have to punch the tree and the fruit falls off. So it's a way to have like a power up on the board that you can see, but you don't have to worry about getting until you need it. Like if you break a box and leave the power up on the board, like the monkey will pick it up and then you lose it, right?
Gotcha.
But having it in a tree and you can see it, you'd be like, so like apples, for instance, heal you. So if there's like an apple tree, you'll see an apple on the tree and you'll be like, okay, I'm saving that for later when I need it, and I'm going to go punch that tree when I need that apple.
Yeah.
And so...
That adds an interesting layer versus the boxes, like the visibility.
Yeah.
So when you're brainstorming ideas with Pixel Gorilla, what I've learned is he's thought through a lot of this stuff. He's done a lot of thinking before and planning before he started at this. So I've got to come up with like 10 ideas, and then one of those he's going to be like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Not necessarily that's great, you know, or whatever, but oh, hey, I didn't think about that. And I just put one hash mark down for a victory. That's that's the moment I'm working towards. I got one more for you.
Receptive. Okay, go ahead.
What if there was a boon where instead of like punching a banana peel, what if you could pick it up, put it on your head, and make the monkeys follow you.
What would that do?
Could that be beneficial? Now, okay, I mean, I'm imagining
that'd be the kind of thing I'd want to try.
They're following you from behind, right? So if the monkeys are behind you, you've got an advantage because they're getting to the bananas after you. So it's kind of like you get to disable the monkeys. I'm not sure how exactly this would play out.
We'd have to like build it and see what happens, because that's the kind of power up like I don't understand until I put it into play. Which is a good power up, I think, because you want power ups where players are like, I don't know if this is good or not, or what this even does. And so there's kind of like that learning experience of just buying it and being like, okay, we'll just see how this goes. And if it's terrible, it's terrible. I mean, and it's fine for those to be not good.
I really love that. I love that feeling of, taking a chance on something. Is this going to ruin my build?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's good, though. I think a lot of people are like, why is there bad things? Why are there bad power-ups? Why are there bad boons? You know what I mean? Like, why do those exist? And I think you can't, if everything is good, there is no learn. You just like buy everything, right?
Right.
So I do think there needs to be like less valuable things, or maybe more edge case things, right, that are only useful in this weird circumstance.
Yeah.
Because you want the player to have that experience. I think even an experience like what you said, where like, if I buy this, is it going to ruin everything? And then you buy it and it ruins everything. Like, I still think that's a valuable player experience, because the player's like having an emotional, it's like negative, like they're like, shit, I ruined this run, but it's memorable. It creates like an emotional connection with the game. And I think that's better than just like everything makes you good at the game. Like, that's not as memorable. You know what I mean? And you're never going to forget that moment in Hades when you bought that thing and it screwed you over real bad.
Right.
Like, so I think there's a lot of value to that way of thinking. So.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things when I've been trying to describe to people, just friends who, just gamer friends, I'm playing Hades and I'm loving it. It's a roguelike. Well, what is a roguelike? I've found myself comparing it to the first Mario game, in the sense that it's a fixed, like the levels are, it's a fixed number of levels or whatever. Like, maybe there's random elements in what stages but it's like you took the first Mario game, and instead of just having to beat your head over the controller, pass after pass after pass, doing the exact same thing, they made the process of getting good an interesting journey. Like, you just play Mario and it's like, oh, I missed that jump. Well, I guess now I know I got to jump a little farther next time, or I got to be quicker on this part, and then you get quicker on that part, and then you're on with it. I felt like Hades has all of that, like all of that. I mean, you have to learn how the mechanics work, what your strategies are, all the different enemies, how they move, what they're weak to, what their strengths are. But then both the randomness, the way your choices play into your play style, and all of these different elements just make a scenario where I've never had the patience to play like a hack and slash game or a game that's really technical to the point where I got amazing at it. That's just not me. Hades, I'm creeping up, like turning up the heat. Once you beat the game in Hades the first time, they give you a pact of punishment, and you can turn on all these different negative effects that make the game more difficult. And I'm still in the phase, like, I took a few days off. I needed a Hades break, but I keep coming back to it now and just turning up the heat a little at a time. And I don't think I've ever played a game that made it so fun and so satisfying to just keep hammering at it and to try and get better and better and better. Like, wanting the game to kick my ass harder every time I come back to it. It's a really unique experience that way.
Yeah, it's a really well-designed game, I think, for that reason.
Not only that, but as long as I'm growing up, the voice acting.
All the production values are insane.
The writing, the voice acting. I've never cared so much about characters that show up as 2D illustrations, and as I do in this game. And I mean, the fact that it's like the source material is Greek gods, normally would make me less interested. Like, less interested than, no, I want to meet new characters, you know? Zeus? What the? No, but they make them all into their own unique personalities, and they give them progression that you care about. It's really unbelievable.
A surprising amount of it, too. There's like...
Yeah.
It keeps going way past the moment where you think, like, there's no way there's more.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, there's no way there's more. And there's still like way more.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of progression that like in the story is ridiculous. And so, I mean, not only is it satisfying to technically to go after over and over again, but they keep making me care about the characters long after, you know, the main story arc is done. It's nutty.
I think it's a good system too for like, because when you lose, you have that like kind of, you're like, oh, you know, you're down because like you lost a run. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but like, it's always tampered by that. Like, well, I may have lost, but now I get to go talk to everybody and like upgrade my stuff. And like, I have this nice like moment after I've lost to like learn things and get better and like do all this other stuff. So
when I'm
kind of like tempers that feeling.
When I'm gearing up to lose a run, which I did just last night. I had a run that I'm like, I get to almost to the end boss, and I'm already going, this is not going to end well. Like, I'm already looking forward to resetting the loop and to considering what I'm going to do for my next run, and what am I going to take with me, and like, that's so satisfying.
So hard to do, I think.
And it's a pretty small team that put it together.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's like 19, 20 people or something. Super, super impressive work.
Yeah, Gone Bananas isn't going to have that. You're going to lose and you're going to be like, fuck this game and stop playing.
I think, no, I wonder how it's going to feel. I don't think we talked about the flow of the game specifically, but it's going to be set up with stages and then with a shop in between the stages, basically.
Yeah.
So like every time, so if you collect more bananas than are required, then you'll be able to spend those bananas to either buy a boon. Is that right? Or
There's several things you'll be able to buy in the shop. So like the whole shop thing basically exists to solve a problem, which was if beating the level requires you to get like X number of bananas, in theory, once you got that number, you could just basically stop playing the level and not risk dying, right? Because things are trying to kill you, and not risk dying, and just wait for the timer to run out, and then you beat the level. So like, I wanted to avoid that play pattern where you were, you know, you got the number of bananas and then you stopped. So in order to avoid that play pattern, and we talked at length about this.
I'm flashing back to it now.
Yeah, was that like, okay, what if the surplus bananas were actually really, really valuable, right? And so like the shop exists to make any bananas you collect after that, like they're super useful. Like you really, really want to collect extra bananas because everything in the shop, nothing in the shop's going to be cheap, let's say. So you really need to have like the extra bananas to get the good stuff. But yeah.
And then I think, go ahead.
Oh no. You go ahead.
I think the incentive structure. We had a long talk just one specific night about the incentive structure that for the player, and I think it ended up in a really interesting place, which is, I mean, the scoreboard I think is going to be pretty central to a lot of people's experience playing the game. Like you'll be able to beat the game, and then if you want to keep going at it, it's either going to be for fun or because you want to beat people's score. So if you are trying to get, let me see, maybe I should just make you explain this because I'm going to stumble through it, but
okay.
What are the two, so there's two scoreboards, right?
I think there's, I don't
or
know
just one scoreboard? Just
like,
a banana scoreboard?
Well, there might be like a completion scoreboard or something like this, but I think the main scoreboard is like the high scoreboard, like because everything you're doing, it's like an old school game. Like everything you do is going to give you a little bit of points, right? A little bit of score, but like at the end of the game, you get a score for like however many levels you've beaten, how much damage you dealt, and how many bananas you didn't spend, like how many bananas you have left over at the end of the game. And so the only way to get like the idea here was that we want to make it so if you want to just beat the game, you spend all your bananas willy-nilly, you get super powerful, and you can get rid of curses by spending bananas as well. So every time you get cursed, you could spend some bananas to get rid of it so you don't have to deal with it. And so like that'll help you, make you stronger over the course of playing, and then when you get to the last level, you can just beat it, and you don't have to worry about, you're just done. You beat the game. But if you want to get the high score, you have to save your bananas, because the saving bananas is going to give you a lot of extra points at the end of the game. So in theory, we haven't tested it yet, obviously, but in theory, the only way to get the high score is to not get rid of any curses. So you have to roll with whatever the game throws at you and not buy any upgrades. So you basically have to play the game at the hardest level to get the best score. And so I thought that we had thought that was like a really good way to balance the game, right? Because it doesn't prevent you from beating the game.
Yeah.
Like having a high score is just that. It's just a high score. It's not really, there's no value per se.
It gives you a social end game. After you've beat it. I really like that aspect of the design. Duckonomics asked if there will be other currencies than bananas. Not at the moment.
So there's technically there's 3 currencies. Because the bananas get old. The longer the bananas sit on the board, they like ripen over time. So they get they turn brown. And like when they're brown, you can still pick them up, but they no longer count towards your quota for beating the level. So if you need 10 bananas, you got to get 10 yellow bananas. You can't get 10 brown bananas. But the brown bananas can still be used to buy things just like the regular bananas. And then there's a papaya, a papaya that lets you, is basically like lets you buy anything.
I'm going to need you to stop saying papaya.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So yeah, there's that currency as well. And if it sounds like there's a lot to explain, that's by design. Like I wanted each little mechanic to be super dense, like the bananas getting older over time and not counting. Like that's the kind of thing where it could be easy to think, well, maybe you shouldn't do that because it's really hard for the player to understand that and like learn that. And it's like, yes, it's hard for the player to understand and learn that, but that's like what a roguelike is about, is like you got to make sure that every little piece of the game has something to learn. That way the player has those moments of like, okay, I know what to do the more they play the game. And so like I'm trying to it makes the game feel a lot denser than it probably you'd think it should be.
Yeah, those early moments in Hades, and I'm sorry that I'm going to have said Hades 100 times by the time the show is over, but I've been obsessed, and it's my strongest point of reference towards, for the designs that we're talking about. But it's easy to forget the very first play session. I mean, a few hours. I think I streamed. The only time I've streamed Hades, I think, was the first play session. And it's easy to forget how much they don't explain. There's a lot of documentation in the game, a lot of record keeping, a lot of info that you can just, straight up seek out and absorb. And but then little things like, do I grab this hammer or what's this weird symbol? Or the process of discovery was a really fun part of it. I think this game will accomplish the same thing. Like the gameplay is approachable. Yeah. Everyone understands immediately moving this character around, go pick up the yellow, the pretty yellow bananas. And I think there will be a similar experience there. I think it's headed in a good direction that way. Yeah, where were we? We were talking, I don't know, video games and going bananas. I
think there were some questions in chat. Maybe we can answer.
Oh, I missed a very important one, which was from Falca Rich. He asked if there's a curse that makes the monkeys poop a lot.
I have thought about poop. I mean, monkeys and gorillas. I've thought about it. I think the gorilla there might be a power up in the works where the gorilla can throw something.
What do you think it might do?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the part I'm not sure about, but we'll see. It's got to figure it out. I've started reworking a lot of things because when I write down the power up ideas or like list them out, I try to assign them to a play style. So that way I have like kind of a rough rubric of like how dense each play style is.
Yeah.
And I have like roughly 6 play styles planned, like just strategy wise.
That's pretty good.
They're very
That's
vague,
pretty good density, like
but,
for a game like this.
I mean, you're not gonna like do one specifically. Generally speaking, you're gonna like evaluate. You're gonna like I'm punching boxes now, and then I'm not, and stuff like this.
Yeah.
So it's like I just try to get a good heuristic for like what each play style's like. So.
Og the Enigma asked, how much of an impact will perks have in helping you get more bananas?
A lot of them are about getting more bananas, so they'll have a big impact. So that's something that I'm going to leave up to skilled players to like, because every power up that lets you get more power ups, or every power up that lets you get more bananas, it costs bananas to get that power up. So you have to like understand the investment. Like if it costs 10 bananas, you're like, well, this power up's not doing anything until I've collected at least 10 more bananas, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's like this, you have to do that math, and I think that's like a player thing. It's like, so some power-ups might be really strong, but they might not be worth the investment. And so, you know, that's something where it's like...
Or maybe if you get them early game, you know, they're
it's
going to be
yeah,
better off.
Definitely.
I find that to be pretty, like, that's an interesting moment, having to make that decision. Like, is there enough of the game left that this is worth what I'm investing in it? Again, in Hades.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a big part of it too. Is like you don't want to just make the power-ups super good all the time. You would definitely want to make them better at different points in the game.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So.
Well, I wouldn't. I'm a little. Okay. I mean, we could talk about going bananas a little more. If you got anything specific to say about it, jump in anywhere. But
no, I mean, it's easy. It's better. It's a better game to like show off. But since we're doing like a podcast, like it doesn't really make too much sense to go too deep.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at the risk of putting us into a 3-hour show, I thought maybe we just talk about dreams in general a little bit.
Okay.
I know once you get Pixel Gorilla and myself just talking about dreams, I know it might. We might go off the rails, but I'm curious to hear just sort of your overall take. It's a big question. All right, your sort of overall take on the state of dreams, and maybe where you personally would like to see it go, or what you would like to see for the future of the platform.
So. I'll start by saying, now that we're trying to make Lock for real, I have definitely realized that I am not built to make games to actually program games, right? To actually like do the work to create a game. Let's say like I'm more of a designer, and Dreams is the only tool I can really look at that lets me design and put out the thing I wanted to make. Right, on my own, right?
Yeah.
If I wanted to design a game and like sell it, you know, I'd have to have help. I would have to have people that understood that side of things, like the making games thing. So I still really, really, really appreciate Dreams for that thing, and I will still continue to use it because I'm going to have lots of ideas that I'm not going to be able to get help to make and that I won't be able to sell. And Dreams is basically the only avenue I have that will let me do that. And on top of that, there is a captive audience with Dreams. So I know it may not be like hundreds of thousands of people. It's like maybe it's like 50 people or 100 people that will play it, but that's better than me like not doing anything, right? Like I'd rather have 100 people like enjoy my experience, especially people in the community, because I know I know most of you guys. So just watching people I know, like it's like having a bunch of friends play your thing. Like that's a fun experience regardless, right?
Yeah.
Like no matter about how popular it gets or how like whatever you want to, the amount of recognition, all that stuff like doesn't really matter to me. I'd much rather have like you or Kataya or whomever like stream the game a couple times and like hate it or whatever, and like have that experience and be like, really, I'm really fulfilled by just that.
Yeah.
I think Lock is a really good opportunity to make like a real game, and I am reaching out and getting people to help me. So it's just a different animal, right?
I'm not going to call you out for saying real game, but I did think it.
It's just the way. Yeah. Sorry.
I know what you mean. I know you don't mean to disrespect dreams.
I don't mean it derogatorily. I just mean it. It's like the easiest shorthand.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very hard to like, because I think dreams games are real games. Obviously,
Yeah.
like the term real makes no sense really if you think about it. Like it exists, so it's real. Like anything you can like share or look at is real. So
Yeah.
I just mean in terms of like a game that I could sell. Let's put it that way. Like versus Lock, which any dreams game you make you can't sell, right? And I can't share it universally. Like if we make a Unity version of Lock, we can port it universally. And so there is some benefits to not doing it, to doing it that way, right? And I think most things I would come up with, or like these other games I've made, I wouldn't do that with. I just don't think they are at the level that has enough potential to be in that realm, let's say. Yeah. Like Press X to Puzzle is kind of just like a fun thing I made, and I think it's a good experience, but like, I mean, I don't know, it doesn't seem like to go through all the pain of porting it would be worth it, And so
it'll take you half as long to install as it will to play. I'm exaggerating, but
standalone game's a good way to put it. Yeah, standalone game is a good qualifier. I just think if I ever wanted to like stop doing what I do for a living, like because I work in advertising, I'm a UI designer, or a UX programmer and designer, and I do a lot of animation work in advertising. Like it's a completely different ball game than making games. But if I ever wanted to just like make games for a living, let's say, putting Lock out there as a standalone game is probably my best shot at doing that, Mm-hmm. And so if I don't take it with that, what am I doing? So I wanted to at least put that out there and see what that does. Like you never know what's going to happen, right? Nothing could happen. Everything could change. Who knows? It's worth doing, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think the showing that it had in Dreams definitely demonstrates that there is number one, it's not for everyone, but the people it is for are pretty interested. And I could definitely see it having a small but dedicated following.
Yeah, I mean,
as a standalone game.
Yeah, I'm not aiming at like being solely successful off one game. Like that's like, I just think if I was ever going to go down that road, this is the game to do it with. And so let's go down that road and see what happens. Like if nothing happens. No big deal.
You did get, not to turn us totally back to Lock, but what sort of attention did the game get from sources outside the Dreams community that surprised you? I know there was a couple things, right?
I mean, I've been interviewed a couple times about it by like non-Dreams focused sources, but I mean they're mostly for small articles in a magazine or for smaller podcasts that, I mean, like podcast, not the, like
it's a smaller podcast. It's very small.
Yeah. Like, nothing like, like
but,
Giant Bomb.
This is part of the Dreams community. This is your family.
Yeah.
You're coming over to your uncle's house. I'm not your uncle, but you know what I'm saying.
I mean, it definitely presents as having more legs than I would have even thought. Like people are genuinely interested in talking about it and playing it, regardless of how it was made. You know what I mean? That's why I think doing what I'm wanting to do with it seems like the right thing to do because of those things,
Yeah.
So, do I think it's like a great game? Like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, I don't think it's like the next puzzle, like the next Witness or whatever. Like,
right.
But it's
you're blowing the lid off the whole system.
Yeah. No, I just think for me personally, if I ever wanted to break into that industry, now is the time with this thing.
You put in the work. I mean, you put in the work. Mm-hmm. It speaks for itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to Dreams.
Hold on one sec. Sorry.
Well, Miss Yaiko says, I would definitely buy Locke if it turned up on the PlayStation Store or Steam. So would I. So would I. I mean, I probably wouldn't have to, but I would just to support it. What else we got in chat here? If Falcon Rich wants to be popular, he'll join a boy band. Falcon Rich also asked if Pixel Gorilla had considered trophies for Gone Bananas. I doubt it. I think there's a lot going on in the game, so I think the incentives are probably beating the game and getting a high score.
Sorry, I'm thinking back.
All good. So we're heading back to Dreams.
Yes, the State of Dreams. I think the State of Dreams it's like predictable place. I think where like like player counts down from where it used to be. I mean, I assume that's what you're alluring to, like when you ask, like, what do you think the State of Dreams is?
Well, I mean, I guess overall, whatever you're thinking about.
I mean, I think it's where it. I mean, there's still not a lot of advertising push for it. I think it's not surprising that player counts where it's at, or that like maybe it does seem like it's waning to some. Like, I don't think it's any less healthy than it was. I think Media Molecule's still updating it. They plan to do updates that are exciting and interesting, and I think all those things are going to be good for it. The next thing is just about getting people to see it as what I think it really is, which is like an indie game platform. When you look at stuff like itch.io or other similar things, like there's a lot of excitement in those communities about new games, and those are games that people are just making and throwing out there. They're not like big releases with any ad behind them. I think there's still kind of this weird, like, what is Dreams conversation that still happens a lot, and it's like that's unfortunate. Because I think if you just said it's just a platform for indie games, people would get it a lot better, like a lot faster. I know it's a lot more than that.
Right,
like,
right.
Again, like a lot of the way I look at things is through the lens of games and game design. So I'm not trying to disparage like video creators or audio creators and all that stuff. I think. When I say it's like an indie game platform, you could take out indie game and put in whatever thing you're interested in and still say it's like an indie music platform. It's indie animation platform, and it's still true, right? And so you just got to, I think the sentiment is what I'm trying to say. It's like, it's where you go if you want to experience like these independent sort of creations that are like you can't get anywhere else, that are like unique and like they have voice. I mean, they have their own voice, they have their own heart and stuff. Like, it's not produced by some big corporation trying to make money. It's produced by people who individually care about the thing they're making. And so it's very easy to just look at it like, oh, it's just a user-generated platform, right? I think that's such a bad phrase. Like, user-generated has like a lot of negative connotations to it, where it's like, it's just shitty. You know what I mean? Like it's user generated just doesn't mean anything, but like it still takes a lot of effort to make things, right? To make games, to make music. Like, you actually have to care to make those things. And so like it's interesting in that way, and I think there is a lot of people out there that are interested in that stuff. They just don't know to come here to look. And so like I don't know how I mean, I do work in advertising, but like it does seem like a hard problem to solve directly, like because
I've been thinking
how do you
about
convince people, right?
I've been thinking about Dreams advertising a little bit this week, and something that struck me was I know like there's more than likely a larger advertising push planned when the platform has evolved a bit more and there's more content for people to play, etc. I imagine that's coming. But in the things that we have seen so far, I don't feel like they have visually emphasized the creation element. I think, just something like sculpting in dreams, giving us strong visuals that show, that show something being sculpted in real time. Like, I think that could help tell the visual story. I mean, I don't even remember the little bit of marketing they did at launch, and I feel like what was there was very like sort of fanciful, and it looked fanciful and bright,
nebulous.
but nebulous. There you go.
Nebulous is the way I would.
It was nebulous.
It's like, what is this?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a hard problem. I mean, from my perspective, I would solve it from a get viewers first, and the creators will come. Like, if there's an audience, I mean, like, creators will come. So, like, the question, like, why use dreams to make your thing, becomes a little bit easier to answer. I don't know, like, if you advertise how easy it is to make something, like, does that appeal widely enough to make dreams more popular, let's say? Maybe. I don't know. Like, I haven't done any of the market research. I have no clue.
I mean, I always read the situation like creators are pretty sticky in dreams. I mean, I think the player base, I don't think it's been dissipating. I don't think
it's like 1,000 a day or something like this, right?
Every time I look, it's just give or take, around 1,000 a day. But I think it does seem that most of those people are creators. I mean, I think creators who have discovered the tools seem to like them, seem to stick around. We all have ideas for how they could be better. Yeah. But
I've explained why I'm going to continue to use it for as long as I can, right? Like, because for me,
it gives you a superpower that you don't have otherwise,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I'm a designer first. I'm not a sculptor or a modeler or anything like that. Like, but like you said it precisely correct. Like, it gives me the superpower to take my designs and put them out there, by myself, which is like the biggest challenge to doing it any other way.
To create lock in 2 years and change instead of how
like
many?
Not doing it.
Instead
basically
of
not
infinite
not
years.
doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
so I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I've
read. I've read the situation as one. The problem seems to me to be retaining players, and I know we talk about this on stream from time to time. I definitely, I've been of the opinion for a while that they're probably working on a larger platform update that that will hopefully come all at once and address a lot of the issues for players, to make it more of a social platform, more of an interactive platform to get players more invested in the games that are there. I don't know what all that entails, but we did have let's see, I see a Detolier and a Freakers a few minutes ago might have said the word Dreams Plus in chat.
I don't believe anything until it's actually officially announced. So that's the end of that.
That's the safe. So we don't need to get into Dreams Plus and if you're not familiar with there was a purported leak of, I don't even know what it would have been, because it definitely doesn't look like it would have been release dates. But to me, it smells credible. But I mean, all the information is just Dreams Plus. Like that's really all there was in it. So let me ask you, Dreams Plus aside, if there was I want to know, what would your asks be? What would you want to see in a big update? Whether it's PS5 features or whether it's,
I mean, nothing really. I mean, like, I don't have any, like, I never think about it, to be honest, because the thing I think that needs to change, like the things I would change about Dreams, is specifically how it's positioned and not what's in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think the creation tools, sure, there could be way more tools. You could have invisible sculpts, whatever. All those things would be great. None of those things are going to fix anything that are going to change anything, really. It's just going to give us more power.
Yeah.
Right? in my opinion. Like those more thermo, awesome. Currently, I think the thermo's fine right now, but that's fine. You know, all those features. I think the play mode could be completely overhauled to be a better experience for people who just want to play Dreams. Like that could happen. That would be nice. But to me, it's all about it's positioned in like the world, like how it exists as a thing that I would address. Like either I would clarify it, right? Like no, it's just a game. It's just a toy. Like does Sony just see Dreams as like a toy that people engage with, and then the games are in there, or is it like a platform? Is it truly a game or a creation tool platform for music or whatever? And then if that's the case, then position it as such, and make it operate in the world as such. Like let there be like a storefront that you don't even have to have Dreams for, that where you can just, you're not paying for anything really, but like make there be like an interface on PlayStation that lets you just play Dreams games.
How amazing would that be if Dreams got integrated into your PlayStation in that way?
It'd be huge.
It's born on PlayStation. It lives there. It may one day die there. And it seems like a really good opportunity to bring people in to discover that space.
Right. And I'm not saying that's what they should do. I'm just saying they need to like land somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think for me, the thing that bothers me the most is the positioning is unclear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I don't understand how Sony sees the game. I don't even really understand how sees the game. You know what I mean? Like how they see Dreams. What do they think Dreams is?
Yeah.
Like I think if they just see Dreams as just like another PlayStation exclusive, that's just like a toy. I'm using the word toy. I know it sounds derogatory, but like I think it says the right thing, right? It's just like a thing that you just play with, essentially. It's just a game. It's just like it's God of War.
It's any game.
What I mean? Yeah, it's just any game, and it just does its own thing, and that's fine, right? But like, it doesn't feel that way to most people. Like, people get really passionate because you're creating stuff, right? Like it doesn't feel like it should just be labeled just a game, because of how much hours and time you put into it. And so I think some clarity over the future of like how they see the platform, and maybe that's up in the air. Maybe they don't know themselves, and that's. I mean, but if you're asking me what I want to see from an update, it's that I want to see like how they picture Dreams living on in the future and like what form that takes, and then once they do that, then we can talk about features, right? Because if they see Dreams as like a publishing platform, well, then we can go on for days for features, right?
Yeah.
But if they see it as just a PlayStation game, like, does it need more thermo? No. You know what I mean? Does it need invisible scopes? Not really.
Right. Yeah, I mean, all that stuff seems like icing to me. And there's not a single one of those things that people mention that I wouldn't also want, like invisible skulls.
Oh, sure.
More thermo.
Yeah, I want all that.
I want the PS5 version. But I mean, the reality is it's a growing studio, but it's still a small studio. And this is a big game. It's the big. So, like, managing this engine alone, if you take away the whole player side of it, I mean, just managing this engine, bug fixing and making improvements is a big old job.
So I think a really good comparison of this is like Mario Maker, right? Like Mario Maker is 100% user-generated creation, right? It's a limited scope for sure.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about how it exists and is positioned, is Dreams a Mario Maker or is Dreams YouTube?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, which is it?
I want it to be YouTube.
I want it to.
I mean, we've heard people at MM make the comparison directly, right? I feel like a YouTube for gaming is something I feel like it's some of the devs at MM that I've actually heard say that.
Right.
And so
that's not positioned.
Yeah. No, it's not.
Currently it's positioned like Mario Maker.
Yeah.
Right. And Mario Maker 1, it just died, right? Like they just like, well, we're not doing that no more.
Yeah, I wonder what the player base is like for.
It's bigger.
A Mario Maker game, is it?
Yeah, but it's I mean, I think it's a good comparison. I think it like really sets the tone of like how maybe like somebody at you don't know what an exec at Sony is thinking. They might look at Dreams and be like, oh, it's our Mario Maker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Something I've been wanting to, I want to play Roblox. Not long term, but this game Roblox has gotten so big, and when I'm thinking of things to compare Dreams to, it seems like maybe the most significant comparison that you can make at the moment. Roblox it's made arguably more money than anything, in just last year, I think, and the player base is enormous. The amount of YouTube content dedicated to Roblox is enormous. What did they, I wonder, let me ask you if you're familiar with, are you familiar with that platform? You haven't used it, have you?
My daughter does. I spend money on it. I have no.
So what have you spent more money on in the past 2 years? Dreams or Roblox?
Definitely the second. I can't say it even because she's in earshot.
Oh no. We can get her on and tell us. Let's do some study group here.
I'd rather not.
Some user research.
But yeah.
So from what you've seen from it, I mean, do you think there's anything?
I think it's just a
directly to
different
be
animal.
learned?
It's a slightly different animal because there's a monetary component.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I mean, from my experience, it's mostly just kind of like run around and do whatever sort of things. There's not a lot of focus in the creations.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, some of them are more focused than others, I imagine. But like, from what I like cursorily gleaned, it's a lot of just like talking. It's more of like a social thing. Right? Like there's other players playing with you at the same time.
Yeah.
And you're chatting with them and you're doing like the most mundane of things, essentially, task-wise.
I saw a YouTube video the other day with, I mean, just an absurd amount of views. I think one of my buddies told me that his kids were watching this YouTuber, and we chat about that stuff. And I was honestly floored at the
numbers,
the simplicity. Well, the numbers were huge, but the simplicity, Roblox it's been around for a while now, and the game that they were showing off, it was just like the weirdest games in Roblox, and it was just like, oh, it's the same thing I've seen everyone else do, and they've got a grass platform floating in a blue space. And the difference in this game is all of the heads had really long necks, and they sort of trailed on the ground. And other than that, it was the most basic we can go stand on this rotating platform and watch our long necks flop around. And there was like nothing happening, and yet it seemed to be everything to the kids who were playing it.
Yeah, I mean, like there's so many different reasons for that, you know, like the fact that it's picked up by all these YouTubers who are specifically targeting kids, and it self feeds and it self grows, right? It's almost like the platform doesn't even matter. Like the Roblox thing itself doesn't even matter. It's just the fact that it's social, that there's money involved, and that kids already liked it. Right, like, and so like those are like the YouTube like feeds that, fosters that environment.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, counterwise, you don't see things about like millions of views on videos for like the weirdest games in Steam. Like it's just like not even like a comparison.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's something.
And if you did,
there.
they would be way more interesting games than the one.
And there'd be no
views.
Right. There'd be no views.
So is multiplayer our Lord and Savior? Is that? I mean, I'm starting to feel that like that's to get players to stay. That might be the biggest factor.
It's hard to say. I don't think it's as clear as it seems to most people. I don't think it's like a silver bullet.
Yeah.
Because the thing about Roblox multiplayer is that it's like ever present. Like everything is. That's what it's about, right? Like the whole platform is about that.
Yeah.
Right. Every game you just join the thing, and it's like a MMO style environment where you just like everybody can join.
Have you ever seen does nobody make single player experiences in Roblox?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it to say for sure, but it doesn't seem like that's the thing.
Yeah. I've seen
You know
some
what I mean?
I feel like the only thing I've seen single player, and again, like I don't know. I brought up Roblox and I know jack about it, but but
Yeah, I mean,
I've seen it some platforming, like some just like super basic like, a rows of squares you're jumping across platforming that seemed like it was single player focused. But yeah, other than that, it seems to be just the social angle. Like I could absolutely see that doing better in Dreams, that social angle. I mean, if they could bring those people to this platform, the creators are here. There's no money, but the creators are here regardless. Like that says a lot. And I think
yeah,
there's a lot of brilliant people that could come up with any number of interesting social gaming scenarios, and you've got a whole world of anything you want to live in. Like you don't just have to go to this like Lego brick looking, basic ass place. Like you can go anywhere, any art style that, you
that
know
sounds just like, that sounds monumental to me though. Like as far as a change goes, like to get to that place.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't just sound like adding multiplayer is going to get us there. It sounds like you'd have to have like the social systems in place to support it. You'd have to have like creators making those things to support it.
Mm-hmm.
You like, cause not everything in Dreams, I mean like everything in Dreams is single player, right? Like there's even experiences that don't even make sense to be multiplayer, right? Like we were talking, like there's just animations, there's just films, there's just music, there's just things that are hard to even describe. Like only it does seem like a lot has to happen to get to the same place.
Freakers says if people could create their own worlds for people to hang out in like VR chat, maybe that'd be a thing. I mean, I definitely see what you're saying. Like it's complicated, but something that simple as, hey, someone made this really compelling space and you could just go and hang out there and play with some stupid physics things and talk to people. That seems pretty
that's
feasible.
Kind of the flip side. It's feasible. I'm just saying a lot has to come together.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
And I think the flip side of what I'm saying is that like it only takes one, right? Like you're saying, like if somebody makes one good one that kicks off, like rising tide lifts all ships, right? So like, once you got people in the platform, but it would be nice if like the social component was a little bit more a part of the platform. Like right now, like there's comments and thumbs and whatever, but like I think a larger focus on a social component married with multiplayer being added would be enough of a jolt to get things off the ground more than they are now.
Yeah.
I can't say for certain though. It seems like again a lot of stuff that has to go right.
Duckonomics says, when I played Roblox 8 years ago, it was like a weird Minecraftian playhouse with shooters, building mechanics, tycoon games, platforming areas, and it was all fun because of the multiplayer.
Right. But the multiplayer had to be integrated. Like I think the multiplayer in Roblox is like integrated into the platform. It's like not, you know what I mean? Like you're not having to make it as the creator. Like you're just like leveraging the multiplayer part of the platform in your game.
Yeah.
Whereas like, maybe they do that. Maybe that's how they implement the Dreams one. Like I don't know. Like maybe you just flip a switch at the front and it's like this is multi. Like and like so there's also this other element of Roblox where like you have a character, right? That when you play one of the games, that's your characters in that game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a meta. It's like you have your profile, which is your character and all the stuff you've purchased and whatever, all your outfits. Like to me, that system is not synonymous with a Dreams platform.
Yeah, that's very different.
Right? Because most people want you to play their multiplayer game where you're playing as whatever they made, not your character. Right. I know we have the imps, but I don't think that's really the same thing.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't seem like a good fit to give you an avatar in Dreams, the game where you can make and be anything.
Right. It doesn't seem like it makes sense. But I think that's also what's helping Roblox be successful is that you have that profile character. No matter what people make, it leverages that system. The multiplayer is the same across every game, right? It's always the same setup.
Yeah,
like it's designed around that, and Dreams is like a lot more free form than that. So I don't it's different. It's not like you can't just say point at that other thing and be like, if we do that, it'll work.
Right.
I don't think it's that clean, unfortunately.
I'm glad they got a lot of smart folks over at MM.
Yeah, smarter than me, smarter than us. Well, they hired RBD, so we know that they're hiring smart people.
They got a high standard.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. It's tough. It's a problem I wouldn't want to solve. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's usually where I end up when I'm thinking about, oh, what would I do? What does Dreams need for the future? Like, I've got a few ideas, but if I was the person in charge of making that decision, that's a lot of pressure.
Like the thing, if I could snap my fingers and make something be a thing, it would be to make the Dreams like surfing storefront be a storefront in the PlayStation platform.
Yeah.
And not require you to have to actually download Dreams.
Yeah, yeah.
And you could just download a single game and play it.
Or not even
that
download.
Would be
just like, yeah.
Just
get
stream
right
it in because it's so small. Yeah.
Yeah, that would
I mean,
work
you probably
really
have to
well,
have.
probably.
They'd have to probably bake the Dreams engine into the PlayStation platform, right? So that like you had the engine under the hood. But I mean, if it can exist in a game, it can exist in the OS.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Nope.
So like, that would be the thing I would do. I'd put the Dreams engine in the OS and then make games and stuff, not just games, but music and whatever, accessible straight from the menu, without having to actually have. And I think that would have a huge, huge impact. I could be wrong, but my gut tells me that would have a huge impact on people's experience with the game, because there's literally no friction outside of owning a PlayStation. So.
And I think it would be nice that I think it would be also a great way to showcase some games like Lock that are bigger experiences, just more, a more substantial gameplay experience. You can go into Dreams and look at all the MM picks, and everything there is worth seeing for some reason, but it's still not. I think a lot of people want an even more filtered, version. Like, just show me the absolute cream of the crop here.
And I think it's a win-win scenario too for the Sony, right? Because it gives them a very different sort of thing to sell on, right? Like, it gives them a very different angle than their competitors, because now it's you compare PS Plus and Xbox Gold or whatever it is, right? The subscription service. Game Pass, and you can compare those two because they're so clean, right? And Game Pass is better, Gold is better, whatever.
Yeah.
But then if you're saying, well, if you buy a PlayStation, you get all this weird stuff, you get all this independent stuff just for free.
That you can't, and it's exclusive, and you can't go to Steam and get any of these games until Lock ruins that.
Well, yeah, I mean, what August saying is true. It does seem like it would be a giant, and Duck said it too, it would be a huge problem. There's a lot of issues with what I'm saying too. It's I'm saying if I could snap my fingers and make it be a thing.
Yeah, and all the problems are solved. Yes.
Yeah. So clearly that's maybe not a realistic suggestion. So I'm just saying magically that's what I would do.
Yeah, no, that's the good question. I want to know, what would you do with magic?
Yes, exactly. I
think if I had the magic Dreams wand and I could make one thing, I'm going to be predictably here. I just look early in Dreams' lifespan, there were people saying multiplayer. This platform will not thrive until there's multiplayer, and I would always think it didn't jive for me. It didn't make sense. I'm kind of on that bandwagon completely now. And it's just the more I see what people are doing now in games like Roblox or, the social experiences in Fortnite, and I compare them to my own experiences. So something I always hearken back to is Halo 2. First game I played multiplayer online with friends. I dipped into Phantasy Star Online and, played a few painful rounds of Unreal Tournament, stuff like that. But when I got Halo 2 and I sat down with a headset with friends of mine, the first night of Halo 2 was no gameplay. It was, hey, let's there's a map called Zanzibar with a big wheel on it, a big wheel with spokes. What would you? I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's random video game obstacle is what it is, and we spent an entire evening, just painstakingly pushing the explosive crates from one part of the map, into the wheel, piling it up with vehicles, like just playing with the physics of this world for hours and hours and hours. And there was so much joy to be had there out of such simple mechanic. We weren't even tapping into the real mechanics of the game, and had this experience that I still think about. Yeah. And Falconrich says, look at Among Us, a very simple game. It's the multiplayer social element that blew it up. Single player gaming is great, but I'm really of the belief at this point that to create the substantial player base I would like to see in Dreams, multiplayer is probably at the core of that. So that's where my magic wand goes. Poof, multiplayer.
I think it's social's the core, right? Like, because like it's almost doesn't, like you're saying, like we're barely even engaging with the game. Yeah. It's because you don't need a game. You know what I mean? You just need a place to hang out with your friends.
Yeah.
Right. And so like the more the game is interesting, the more there is to do, obviously the better. But really the secret there is that like you can make any game good if there's like, you can play it with your friends. Like that's all. I find that often like a defense of kind of bad games, as people will say, but it's fun if you play with friends. And I'm like, yes, but any game is, if you have friends, it's fun. I mean, like your friends are fun. Like hopefully that's why they're your friends.
Yeah, I don't know. The game was pretty good, but my friends were my friends were real
exactly. Shit. Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like that's just, it's good to have friends make everything better. Obviously, like you can go see a terrible movie with your friends, right?
I think we got Pixel Gorilla to say something sweet and sentimental, and I can't think of a better place to wind it down than that.
I only play an asshole on TV.
You're on TV right now.
You know what I mean.
Pixel Gorilla, it's been delightful chatting with you. Do you have, I'm going to throw it to you here, if you've got any closing thoughts, if there's anything you want to plug, any call to action for the people of the Dreams community?
Sadly, no. I mean, obviously, I think everybody's probably knows how to find me on Twitter, 800 Pixel Gorilla. If you want to follow me there, I don't post that often. I have been, okay, let's actually do something. I have been streaming more regularly. It's more like 2 times a week. There's no schedule because my life's always in flux. I have a lot of personal things, but like I've been trying to stream development a lot more because I think it keeps me on task. So if you're interested in, throwing me new ideas for Gone Bananas or telling me my games suck or whatever you want to do, you can find me streaming at least once or twice a week, usually in the evenings, Central Time.
Nice.
Like 11 o'clock.
We'll get a link to that in the show notes. Falco Rich says your games suck. So you don't have to go to his stream to tell him. Just tell him right here. Yes. And I'm going to wrap it up there. If you want to do something nice for the podcast here, click the like button or the subscribe button, or you could rate it, or you could review it, or you could write your grandmother a handwritten letter, telling her all about it. That's just another thing you can do. And until next time, be excellent to each other and keep dreaming. And scene.